to the Zoning Board of Appeals public hearing, June 24th, 2021. I make a motion to open the public hearing. Can I have a second?
Second.
And all in favor?
Aye.
All right, so we're starting off with one decision that has been circulated by Counsel Jeffrey Blinkoff for case number 3103, 46 John Street. I make a motion to accept the decision as written. Can I have a second?
Second.
And all in favor? Julia, how are you voting on accepting 46 John Street, the decision as written?
I am approving the decision as written.
And Susan?
I'm a nay.
You're a nay. And I am in favor, but that will, I do not believe, carry, Jeff.
It will not. I would perhaps suggest that if we could wait for additional board members before filing. I apologize if I had not drafted the decision in accord with what I had understood the board's determination to have been at the last hearing.
I think your determination at the last hearing was fine. I feel like they already have a swimming pool, so why am I giving them a variance for a swimming pool? But that's my thing.
But that was for, may I just clarify one thing? The John Street. Oh, okay, because I had understood that there was a lack of clarity regarding 86 West Prospect. That was the one that had been tabled.
Can I interrupt Jeff for 1 second? I did reach Kevin, or he called me back, and he said he's having trouble logging on.
Okay.
He has to go off and start again. He has to shut his computer down.
I'll send him my link as well.
I'll let him.
Jeff, once Kevin goes on, then you have a yes.
Oh, okay.
I just disagree with, I've been thinking about how it all goes.
Well, why, just to move things along, why don't we then circle back to this? And Jeff, is it okay if we move on to case number 3076, which is a wetlands permit, and I make a motion to approve the permit as written by Nelson Pope, Chick Voorhees for case number 3076, 950 Meadow Lane. Can I have a second for that?
Second.
And all in favor?
Aye.
So the motion is to accept that wetlands permit as written, and I vote in favor of that. Susan, how do you vote?
Aye.
And Julia? You may be muted, Julia.
I voted aye.
Okay, so that one, Jeff, will carry 950 Meadow Lane.
Okay.
And then we have on the agenda a decision not yet written for 86 West Prospect.
Correct.
But we can circle back and cover that when Kevin logs on. Let's move to case number 3101, which is 303 First Neck Lane, David and Holly Scher. I thought we would adjourn this pending receipt of written guidance from the building department. If the applicant is here and wants to present, they can, but know that we're going to leave this matter open for all purposes at any rate.
Chairman,
Kat?
I should mention I received late last evening a brief response from the building department. I will forward that to the board. I had understood that the matter was being passed for that to be received, so I'll forward that to all members of the board.
Okay, you'll email that to everybody?
Yes, I will.
Kat, is the applicant here for 303 First Neck, or should we just keep it open for all purposes?
Yes, Bailey Larkin is here.
Did she want to speak to this?
Yes, she has her hand up.
Sure.
Bring her in. She's coming in now. Bailey, you're in.
Bailey Larkin with Bennett and Reed for the applicant. I had heard that the application was being adjourned. I would just ask that we be provided with a copy of any written correspondence you received from the building inspector.
Are we in charge of that?
No, if I may be heard, Mr. Chairman,
Of course.
I've received it, and so I don't have a problem with sharing that with council if the board doesn't object. It's a brief note, but I don't have a problem sharing that.
Okay, no, absolutely, Bailey. We'll share it.
Right. Ms. Larkin, I think I have your email address in your prior correspondence. So if I have any problem, I'll reach out by phone.
Okay,
Thanks.
thank you.
Okay, so I'm going to motion to adjourn case number 3101 for all purposes, 303 First Neck. Can I have a second?
Second,
And then all in favor?
aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, so we move on to case number 3104, Town of Southampton, 51 Pond Lane. Kat, I do have a question from, I believe, Brenda Simmons, that some people are can't go on, is what the question says.
Well, I did receive a question from one of the audience members, and they can't go on. They're going to have to share their invite with the people that they want to come in. I don't have the email addresses to do that. So they can either keep trying to get in, or they can send their invite, and we're happy to change the name once they get in.
Okay, are you able to type a response to Brenda?
I typed a response to her colleague, I believe. Anthony Curcio, was that her colleague? Not sure.
Mr. Curcio is the attorney that is representing them.
Right.
Um,
There's someone who has their hand up for this application, Thomas Zacharias. And the traffic person, Patrick Clary. Would you like me to bring them all in?
Yes, I'd like to bring Patrick in. I'm not sure Thomas Zacharias is for this application.
His hand is up. Thomas Zacharias, if you're not here for this application, please put your hand down when it's time.
Zacharias.
Thank you. All right, so Patrick Clary you'd like to bring in?
Yes.
And Mr. Chairman, I'm assisting the village board on this, so I'm going to drop out at this time.
All right, we also have Dr. Georgette Key, Rear Key, and we have their traffic person. Would you like the other two promoted at this time?
Yes.
And Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I didn't see Mr. Guadera.
Yeah, he just left me a voicemail, so he's having trouble.
Okay, I believe everyone is in.
And I just want to did I misunderstand? Is there an issue that people who had wanted to hear the proceedings are having trouble joining? Is that?
Yes, there is an issue with that, but I'm not privy to those email addresses.
Oh,
So
I see.
they have to share their invite with their colleagues. I cannot do that. So if they share their invite and they come in, I can change their names, but I cannot bring them in unless they have an invite that works. I don't have their emails.
Okay, so I'm wondering if perhaps we could I would just suggest that perhaps we could allow a few minutes for them to do that if they wish.
And is there a way for the secretary to actually get the list of people who registered to speak? There's a process.
The building department does not provide that to me.
Well, why not?
I've asked for it.
Well, okay, well, I think we need to ask for it. It's not fair to anyone really. For you, we don't know.
Right.
Okay,
Very-
well, something's gotta give.
frustrating.
It's
Right.
not you, Jolie. I'm just saying the process is thwarted.
There we go.
Could I ask now, what are we doing?
I thought Jeffrey was suggesting, if I heard him correctly, we were going to wait a couple of minutes to facilitate others who are having some difficulty with access.
Oh, okay.
Is that right, Jeff?
That's what I would suggest, and also hopefully Mr. Guadera is able to join.
Yeah, if somebody could help him, he did leave me a message on my phone that he's still having trouble logging in.
I'll get on the phone with him. I'm
Thank
going
you,
to.
Julie.
We're just waiting on one person.
Mr. Curcio, would you be able to start and maybe that person can join in?
Yeah, that's not a problem. Shall I begin?
Whenever you're ready.
Okay. Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the zoning board, Anthony Curcio of Brown, Altman and DeLeo LLP, located at 538 Broad Hollow Road, Suite 301, Melville, New York, 11747. My firm represents one of the applicants, the Southampton African American Museum, or SAM, a DBA under the East End African American Museum and Center for Excellence. The village and the town of Southampton, as discussed previously, are also applicants, and together with SAM, are proposing a museum use of the property at 51 Pond Lane. The museum includes restoration of the former Pierce Concert House in its original location, preservation of the existing one-story cottage on the northern portion of the site, construction of a new visitor center on the western portion of the site, and additional improvements to the site itself. Just a little background from the last time we met. On May 27th, we presented our application to the board and discussed the application at length. The applicant requested the following variance relief from section 116-11.1, yard regulations in resident district, total side yard setback of 52.2 feet where 54.2 is required. Section 116-9A1E, the applicant requested that a cellar and heating be allowed in the original historic Pierce Concert House when the code does not permit in order to have a small place to install mechanicals. The cottage is on a slab, but the applicant is also requesting that heating be allowed in the cottage. Section 116-14D, request to allow for 6 parking stalls when 53 is required, resulting in a 47 stall deficiency. Section 116-14G, minimum driveway width, request to allow access driveway width of 20 feet where 24 is required. Section 116-9A B1, request to allow the original historic Pierce Concert House to remain at 570 square feet, but only 520 square feet is permitted by code. Section 116-9AD, request to allow the existing height of the original historic Paris Concert House to stay at 24 feet in height, or a maximum of 16 is permitted. Further, the applicant presented the following to the board: background on the location of the premises, support from various prominent organizations and residents supporting the application, the 5-factor test as to why the requested variances before the board should be granted, proof that the applicant qualifies as a museum and that the premises will be used as a museum, special exception use general standards as provided in the code for use of the premises as a museum in an R20 zoning district, history of the project and Paris Concert, and expert testimony from Dr. Greer Key, who's in charge of design for the museum, Brenda Simmons, who gave historical background, Bob Nelson of Nelson and Pope, who is gave a site plan interview, Chick Voorhees of Nelson, Pope and Voorhees, who gave was a planning expert, presented the special exception use standards, and Osmond Berry of Nelson and Pope, traffic engineer, discussed the parking study. An opinion of John Breslin of the Breslin Appraisal Company was also provided to the ZBA clerk prior to the May 27th hearing. During the presentation, the board had several questions and concerns that the applicant had to look further into, including but not limited to parking, site plan layout, and the use of the existing cottage. On June 10th, 2021, the applicant provided responses to this board's questions, exhibits, and a revised site plan to the ZBA clerk with copies that were provided to the board. Our responses to the board's questions and concerns were as follows. The initial site plan filed with the zoning board has been revised as follows. The kiosk called out on the site plan is eliminated and replaced with a sunshade and labeled as a C-Scow Plaza. A sample picture of the sunshade to be used was provided to the board in our submission. The proposed tranquility ponds have cross sections added to clarify the depths of the pond, show safety measures, and the streams are now eliminated from the site plan. Plans reflecting the same were provided in our submission. Additional fencing and self-locking gates will be included in the area in the front of the visitor center, designed to secure the proposed improvements in the front yard. Plans reflecting the same were provided in our submission. The cottage no longer includes a concession area, and the cottage will remain in its current status pursuant to the last issued certificate of occupancy. And E, the multi-purpose room in the visitor center has now been changed to be used for exhibit space. It is anticipated that there will be approximately 3 to 4 employees during normal operation hours with volunteers on an as-needed basis. A building coverage analysis contrasting the proposed lot coverage at the property to the lot coverage at current parcels within the immediate vicinity of the property were provided as part of our submission. Information in regard to the IRS not-for-profit designation of the East End African American Museum and Center for Excellence, and 2, New York State Board of Regents provisional charter that permits the EEAA-MCE to do business in the state of New York were provided to the board as part of our submission. And an additional memorandum clarifying the ZBA's questions and concerns related to parking and the requested parking variance was also provided as part of our submission. To be perfectly clear, in addition to the requested area variances, the applicant is also requesting special exception use approval. We are not requesting a use variance in any way. The issue of whether or not the property will be used as a museum, we believe, was resolved based on testimony provided by the applicant at the May 27th hearing. However, after further research, we were able to obtain information regarding the process for chartering and registering of museums in New York State, which will provide the board with further clarification. In particular, we found the following. Pursuant to Chapter 1, Part 3.27 of the Rules of the Board of Regents of the New York State Education Department, chartering and registration of museums and historical societies with collections, the definition of a museum is an organized, non-for-profit institution, including, but not limited to, halls of fame, zoos, aquariums, botanical gardens, and arboretums, that is essentially educational or aesthetic in purpose with professional staff, which ordinarily owns, exhibits, maintains, and/or utilizes artifacts, art, and/or specimens, including non-tangible electronic video, digital, and similar art, cares for them, and exhibits them to the public on some regular schedule. To be chartered as a museum, a provisional charter is required. To be eligible for a provisional charter, a museum with collections shall submit to the Board of Regents a petition for a provisional charter together with evidence in writing, which, in the judgment of the Board of Regents, makes it appear likely that the institution will be successful in achieving registration. The rules go on to further state, the name of the institution shall be consistent with and clearly indicative of its purpose, and shall not be identical with or so similar to the name of any existing entity as to cause confusion between the institution and any other incorporated under the laws of New York. The East End African American Museum and Center for Excellence was granted non-for-profit status by the IRS as a 501c3 organization, and its purpose is to have displays and exhibits that include artifacts, art, and/or specimens. Clearly, the applicant meets the definition of a museum. Further, the applicant is chartered as a museum, as the applicant received their provisional charter in 2008 and has renewed it numerous times since, with an expiration date for October 19, 2025, which was recently filed with the ZBA clerk. Lastly, the name of the institution is clear and states its purpose with no ambiguity. The East End African American Museum will be used just as that, a museum to celebrate the life and times of Pyrrhus Concert, an African American with rich history on the East End of Long Island. As the board can clearly see, the applicant has followed all procedures set forth by the state to starting and operating a museum and becoming chartered by the state of New York. In our case at hand, the applicant has chosen to use the property as a museum, a use which is clearly permitted in the R20 zone, subject to the granting of a special exception use by this board. This board's duty in granting a special exception use is to determine if the village's conditions for a special exception use under the code are met by the applicant. In addition, by the village code expressly stating that a museum is permitted in the R20 zone, subject to a special exception use, this confirms the proposed use is already in harmony with the village's comprehensive plan and is not inconsistent with public health, safety, morals, or general welfare of the community. The museum clearly meets the standards for a special exception use under the code as presented at the May 27th hearing. As such, pursuant to the village law, it is respectfully requested that this board acts under its duty and grant a special exception use for a museum at the property. Before I turn it over to the board for questions, I would also like to let the board know that the applicant has a long-standing relationship with local elementary schools going back 10 to 15 years. Recently, the applicant joined a school-wide morning program at the Southampton Elementary School, celebrating Juneteenth, which, as you know, was recently designated as a federal holiday. During that celebration, 3 representatives from the applicant joined the panel discussing Pyrrhus Concert and its historic designation. This board was provided from that celebration a support mural from Mr. Epley's 3rd grade class at the school about Pyrrhus Concert. As the board can see, there is an opportunity here not only to discuss Pyrrhus Concert's legacy, but also bring people together in a positive way. I'll now turn it over to the board with any questions they may have. We have our experts on the call, including Bob Nelson, site plan overview, Chick Voorhees, and Osmond Berry, traffic engineer.
I have a question.
Sure.
I have repeatedly asked for the documents that were submitted, that is actually, I guess, the proposal for which the Christopher Halpern gave a charter to the African American Museum. The actual, what they listed as the collection, whatever was done in 2008 or revised, and I have not received that. I just get a piece of paper that doesn't really have any descriptive issues that makes me wonder.
Well, it's the charter that they were issued. I'm not sure.
What is their application for the charter? What led up to that? That's what I want to know, the specifics.
For a museum.
This is a piece of paper. That is not what I'm asking
That's
for.
not where you were provided. We provided you with the charter.
What was the proposal for the charter? Where you just told us that you have to list what's in the collection and all these things. Where are the details, sir? What was sent? Because in 2008, is this when the first charter happened? That's correct, right? There was no talk of the Pyrrhus Concert House as a museum, was there? It was owned by people who lived in it. So I want to see what was the actual appeal? You've just told us the process. So I may have been misunderstood, but just showing me a charter isn't really I want the
How is
specific.
how is that not good enough? That's evidence that the state looked at it and they approved.
Mr. Cuccio, I have the right to ask for
Curcio, it's
specifics,
Curcio.
and I don't want to be, if you don't want to give them to me, I will note that. Thank you.
I didn't say I didn't want to give them to you. I'm just.
Well, I'm asking for it and I'm finished asking, okay?
Okay.
Julia or Kevin, do you have any questions, or do we want to hear from neighbors or any other concerned individuals? You're on mute, Julia.
All right, I said what I'd like is to have the opportunity to hear anyone who's here to speak on this evening.
Kevin, did you want to have any questions, or do you want to listen to?
Preservation Long Island has their hand up. They'd like to come in. Can I bring them in?
Certainly. Kevin, I
Kevin,
think
you're muted. You're still muted.
Hello. Hi, good evening. My name is Sarah Counts. I'm Preservation Director at Preservation Long Island. My organization has been involved with the effort to preserve this property, and we've supported it for a number of years, at least 5 since I've been involved with the organization, and also during the demolition, wherein the village issued the demolition permit and the building was taken down. And immediately it was realized that that was a big mistake. And part of the collections of this organization is the timber frame of the original 19th century Fears Concert home. And Ms. Stevenson, you know, I sent a link in the chat. You can look at the chartering process. That's something that the New York State Department of Education does. And the organization that is the nonprofit steward of the site, which has an agreement with the town and the village to be the steward of the property and interpret it for the public, has had a charter and nonprofit status for several years. If you have questions about that process, you know, I encourage you to reach out to them.
Excuse me. I want to see, first of all, the homestead is landmarked. It has a building permit. It has variances to move the accessory structure already. No one's arguing with that, I believe.
I just don't understand the question about the charter.
The question is, what was the appeal, the application, the original one, or the one for which they got a charter? You can't say, I want to have a museum.
I don't see how it's a matter of debate.
Okay, well, I'm sorry, but I do think it's important, and I am asking for it. So I have every right under law to ask for information, and I think it's pertinent.
I don't know if, well, at any rate, Preservation Long Island is a chartered organization, you know? At any rate, I just wanted to.
I want the information for which the charter was given.
I don't know if that's in the purview of the Zoning Board of Appeals to
Not at all.
Examine
It's not.
charters for an organization.
You have,
Well,
I have the right to ask for information. If you want to argue, that's fine. I'll consider the file incomplete.
I don't know if museum charters are the purview of New York State.
Could I speak with our counsel? I don't want to be argued with about this. I either have the right to this information or I don't. Please.
And, you know, I just question the scope of that under the ZBA. I'm not sure, you know, it's only the scope of the New York State Department of Education. And it's up to them to decide who gets a charter. And this organization has had a charter for several years.
If I may, and I don't want to interrupt improperly, but just to clarify, I don't think that what Ms. Stevenson is saying is that she is disputing that a charter was granted. And the Board of Zoning is certainly not saying that they are exercising jurisdiction above or in lieu of the Board of Regents as to whether or not an organization is chartered. I think what Ms. Stevenson was just asking for is what were the circumstances, what were the underlying requests that were asked for that would constitute the museum that became the basis for which the charter was granted. We can certainly follow up with that. I don't think the point was to say in any way that there was a disagreement that a charter was issued. I mean, I don't disagree that the ZBA doesn't have purview over whether or not a charter was granted. That was the question. And I think it's an issue of just what type of information the board is reviewing before it makes a determination with respect to what's before it, not what was before the Board of Regents.
Okay, well, 110%, this organization is a chartered museum. As far as New York State is concerned.
I am not
Nobody's disputing
that.
it.
Okay, so then I don't know what the problem.
No, nobody's
is.
disputing that, but I did want to say I had seen, and not to be rude, but right before you started talking, they had brought you in, but I had seen that Mr. Guadera had been trying to speak. And I think he had been muted. So Mr. Chairman, I'm just wondering if we could return to only because I had seen Mr. Guadera trying to speak, he's muted, so.
Understood, no problem.
Kevin,
No
did you have
problem.
a question or something that
Yeah.
you could add?
You got variances from us before. I'd like to know, why didn't you have the complete package then? In other words, what you want to do now, you could have told us then.
That me or?
I think that the package has been complete. It's
I'm talking about when you
by the
applied
town
last time.
and the.
I'm talking about when you applied last time and you got variances.
I wasn't the attorney last
It
time
made me
we
come in
applied.
with everything at the same time. I don't like this piecemeal stuff, you know, you get a variance, then you get another variance on the variance.
Well, that variance was for, I believe, setbacks, and that wasn't for a museum use or anything like that, so
Right.
I don't think it was relevant.
Why
at the
couldn't
time.
they have all been done at once?
I can't speak to that, Mr. Gadara. I can only speak to what we're doing right now.
All right.
Dr. Greer Key has her hand up. She'd like to speak.
Certainly.
Go ahead. Unmute yourself, Dr. Key.
Good evening, everyone. I just wanted to speak to the fact that we're talking about the charter. I think the charter is very clear. I would not consider our application incomplete. The charter is very specific to telling the entire history of the contribution of African Americans to the greater community and the contributions of African Americans in Southampton and of the East End of Long Island. So that constitutes the charter of the East End African American Museum of Excellence. So by no means is the charter incomplete, or is the file incomplete. So I just wanted to clarify the record that that is the charter that was issued to the East End African American Museum for the Center of Excellence. So that is the leading up to it. And the purpose for it is, again, as was stated many times, is to make sure that we're able to exhibit artifacts, arts, and to have performances, and also to make sure that we're able to go into and educate and provide programming, as well as to have lectures for the greater community. And that is what is on the charter. We have submitted previously in the many folders and applications a full executed charter that is stamped and approved by the state. And what you have now is a raised seal copy of the certified letter, a certified copy that is dated for June 23rd, just to give you an updated charter from the state council. So there by no means is an incomplete charter submitted to the folder. And I just wanted to clarify that information for the record.
Council, could you help me here, please?
Oh, Dr. Key, are you still there as well? I did just
Yes,
want to
I'm
clarify.
here.
Thanks, Doctor. I just thought I couldn't see there. Again, I don't think the board and I don't want to speak for the board, but I do not believe that the Board of Zoning Appeals is in any way disputing that there is an existing charter. That, the board has received that. I'm looking at a 2-page document. It was stamped in June 23rd from the State Education Department. I don't think that was in any way being questioned. The board was just asking for the materials that were submitted in support of the charter. I think that was Ms. Stevenson's request, but nobody is disputing that there is what's identified as a provisional charter.
Well,
in the
attorney,
format.
Can I just say something? Can I just say
Sure.
I understand that we're trying to figure out what led to us being granted the charter, but it's making me a little uncomfortable that we are continuing to go forward with these hearings. And this still has not been established whether or not it's a museum. We have given.
I don't mean to interrupt you, Mr. Curcio. It's to this point, okay? We follow our zoning code. And although you may have established that you are operating a museum on the property, we are looking into whether or not there is operation of more than a museum on the property, activities that would cause you, in our view, to come under Section 19, philanthropic, fraternal, social, or educational institution, office, or meeting room, nonprofit, which would require you to have 3 acres for zoning purposes. So what you're saying, we can all agree that you will be operating a museum. And what Kevin was alluding to and what Susan was alluding to, and it's been brought up several times, is that the board would not have any concern with respect to the rebuilding of the homestead and the cottage. If that was what you were looking for here, it would be a relatively short meeting. And in fact, I believe you've already been granted variances, for the rebuilding of the house. And I believe also the neighbors have said as much, that they don't have a problem with the establishment of a museum here to honor the legacy, to which you've made many references, and everybody is in favor of honoring that legacy. The concern here is with the visitor center. And so Kevin's point was, years ago, it was brought to this board's attention, and there was a presentation for variances connected with the rebuilding of the homestead, and the board heard that and granted those variances. So to Kevin's point, that should have been it. We're done. You've asked for what you wanted. It might have predated you, Mr. Curcio, but you asked for what you wanted. The board listened and granted the necessary variances. Now, years later, it's somehow a substantially expanded project. And that's what we need to, understand, that we don't have a problem with the establishment of a museum here. It's the visitor center, the 4,000 square foot visitor center that we're wrestling with. And that's what, if we can move on now, we'd like to hear from the neighbors, because I think those are their concerns as well.
Well, before we go there, if I can just say, I was here then, and I don't know if you were the chairman, and I don't know if everyone was assembled, because that's not the entire truth of the matter. So I just wanted to make sure that that is officially on the record, because this center was also brought to the table many years ago. This is not the first time that we've talked about this visitor center, because I was here from the beginning. So I just wanted to make sure that that was on the record. So it's not true that this visitor center has just popped up. And I do not remember coming before the ZBA. I know that this was presented before the village board as something that was a design. It was never presented in the form of going for an entire plan. So that I just wanted to make sure was on the record. And number 2, I just wanted to also point that there were some statements that are a little concerning in the fact that We are a museum. You can't make us something else that we're not. We're not a fraternal order. We're not philanthropic. We're not giving out any money. We're not a PBA, a police fraternal order. We're not, you know, any type of Masonic or Eastern Stars that are fraternal. So you can't turn a museum nonprofit into something that it's not. So to try to classify us under the Section 19, under your zoning codes, will never happen, because we are not that, and we cannot change our designation all of a sudden because there's a visitor center in place. So that is a hypothetical that will never happen, and it doesn't befit us. So unfortunately, that is not the case here, and it's far-fetched from what we will ever be and what we're looking to be. So it doesn't apply here, and we've said that time and time again. And the neighbors who just moved there, and Pierce Council, who predates us and this project and them, was destined to be there. And we've always continued to maintain that this visitor center is vital to the sustainability of this project.
Thank you, Dr. Key.
There's a hand up from Brenda Simmons. I'm not sure if she's been promoted. Let me see. Brenda, you're coming in. You can turn on your camera and unmute when you get in.
I am trying not to break down right now because it saddens me that this Pierce concert has been overlooked so many times. I mean, I can go back from 79 to 86. This building should have been historically designated a long time ago, been overlooked. When you had the a celebration, they was trying to overlook it then, and we came out, and I think I showed the book where he was celebrated way back in 98 or whatever it was. I mean, here we are now in 2021, and we're still struggling, trying to give this man, this extraordinary man, this honor that he deserves. And, you know, I understand, Susan, you questioning the provision or whatever's going on. We have no hidden agenda, Susan. We have no hidden agenda, board. We have no hidden agenda. We really do not, you know, and it just saddens me that we keep going back and forth on and on and on and on about this. It just really, really saddens me that it was torn down, and then we find out that, you know, I'm gonna be real at this point, you know, I'm gonna get myself in trouble, probably. I'm gonna be real right now. That house should have never been torn down. The people that own that house saying they were trying to build their dream house, that was not the real point. They want to tear the house down so they can put it back on the market, which they did. We're gonna talk truth now, okay? Because this is ridiculous to me. It really saddens me. It saddens me to the core, that we have to go back and forth and nitpick this. When this was supposed to have been done, this was overlooked and overlooked and overlooked and overlooked for years and years and years and years. How long? How much longer? How much longer are we going to nitpick this? How much longer? I don't get it. I really don't get it. It's not fair to Pierce Concert. It's not fair to our community. It's not fair to the kids. And that building needs to be put in there to help educate the community, help educate the kids. That's what it's there for. And unfortunately, when it was first presented, they were told not to present it, all of that, because that's not what we wanted. So the people that did that didn't listen to us, unfortunately. And we're still paying for this right now as we speak, right now, because of that. Because they didn't want to listen to us like we didn't know what we were doing. And here we are again, back to the same place. It saddens me to the core. It saddens me to the core that we still got to deal with this.
This is the first time this application has come before us.
I know that, Kevin, I know that. But the problem is it came before the board and it was televised and everybody was going crazy about, oh, they're this and they're going to do a fountain and this. That's not what we originally, when Georgia and I talked about this, we told them not to present that because we knew it was going to be a problem, but they did what they want to do anyway. And here we are today dealing with that same mistake that they made, not us. And we got to pay for that. It's not fair. We need that building to help educate the community and the kids. It's not, we have no hidden agenda, none whatsoever, none. Why we have a hidden agenda? We have never had a hidden agenda, never.
All right, Brenda, thank you. Let's hear from the community, or from the public.
Is there anybody from the public who would like to speak?
There's no hands up in the attendees.
May I add something? This is Sarah, Preservation Long Island. This site is one of our endangered historic places. There is a webpage on our website about this and some of the issues surrounding this. And of course, my organization supports this 110%. And I just want to note that building a small additional building is not unheard of. And many, many historical sites do this. And the reason to build this interpretive center, the visitor center, is so that the house itself can stay in the period. So of course, Mr. Concert in the 19th century wouldn't have had all the amenities that the visitor center is going to have, including restrooms, air conditioning, electric, etc. So the vision is to keep that house as close to it would have been when Mr. Concert was there, which is really incredible. And I can't say enough that this man is internationally significant. He is one of the first African-American men to go to Japan. In Japan, he's celebrated to this day. The significance is incredible. And it's not uncommon to have a visitor center to make sure such a significant piece of history is as close to the period as we could get it. So it's part of the vision for the planning for the site, which has been before the village and the town for a long, long time. So I just wanted to say that it's not unusual. This plan is not unusual. In fact, it's fairly modest in terms of, building out of a property, as Mr. Curcio said. If you look at the cultural center to the north of the site, it's totally packed with cultural buildings. And so this is actually modest compared to a site like that. But thank you very much for your time.
I'd like to ask.
You made a good point. That is that the house is not going to have any of the amenities that we have today. It's going to be built like it would have been built in his lifetime. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's going to be a period house.
So it's not going to have electricity or that kind of thing at all.
I'm not sure of the details, but
Well, that would explain why you need the other building.
Yes,
yes,
and it's,
exactly.
and it's basically the size of a 2-car garage. So, there will virtually be, no room for programming really.
We're asking for heating in the house, that's it.
Yeah. For heating, and it virtually would be, not enough space to have children, assemble, especially I know everybody's thinking we're post-COVID, but people still have a hesitancy. But, thinking about the original beams being exposed, we're concerned with wear and tear. So, everything that we've done, I agree. I thank my team that has put a lot of work into this. I think the record speaks for itself. We try to do as less harm as possible. We've cut back as the record and testimony that we provided. We've tried to do everything possible to make sure that there was little, things that would, cause harm. And so I really thank my team, and my heart goes out to myself and Brenda for all of the painstaking nights that we've had. But I just want to reiterate that we've done as best as we could with this site to make sure that it would be given back to the community. Because the worst thing is to put all of this money into this building and the community doesn't feel like it's theirs. So we've heard the community, we've put everything in that they've asked us for. And I think that we've done a really great job. My design team is here with me as the chair. I think that we've done the best that we could with the design at a minimum level. It's sustaining building, self-sustaining building, lead building, everything that we could have done for Martin Day. But to just have the small house there, which is, you know, close to what, 49 square feet, would not be sustainable for the project or healthy for the house itself. So we have to look at the interpretive center as a place that would be given back to the ultimate community so that they would take care of for years to come. There's been a lot of money poured into the project from CPF funds, etc.
And also, Georgette, I just wanted to note, with this new, and Mr. Gadara, to your point about why we need this other building, because there are collections, because there are highly sensitive collections, including a 19th century bamboo brush that was excavated from the site from Japan, which is probably a gift that he was given when he was there. Just an extraordinarily important, amazing item that would need to be exhibited and housed in a special environment. So, you know, in the museum world, we call it climate control. You know, it needs to be in a certain kind of collection sensitive environment, because they are a museum and they do have collections. So that extra building will have those sorts of facilities that could accommodate that level of collections care.
I'm ready to close this application for decision.
We're not ready to close it, but thank you. Julia, do you have anything to speak
Have to hear.
this?
Hold on. I think there's someone who's trying to get in. who
Yes,
Joey's trying to.
Well, I'm looking for a way to say that Joan McGivern would like to come in. Could I bring her in?
Certainly.
Okay. Joan, you've been promoted.
We can't hear you. We can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Sorry,
Yes.
it's been a little frustrating because our clients would like to have a say in this matter. Let me start by saying I'm Joan McGivern of Toomey, Latham, Shea, Kelly, Dubin, and Quattorero, and we represent two adjacent neighbors, Scott and Pamela Klandinsky, who are owners of 57 Pond Lane, which is directly adjacent to the west of the property and shares a common driveway by a 20-foot right of way. And we also represent William and Ann Yanni, who are owners of 16 Culver Lane, which shares the boundary line on the northwest of the property. At the outset, we want to be clear that our clients fully support the rebuilding and reconstruction and management of the concert house and its cottage. That's not why we're here. And we appreciate the efforts the applicant has made today. However, tonight we want to raise some of our continuing questions regarding the visitor center. And our comments focus solely on whether the board, as a matter of precedent, should allow the visitor center, and also whether the board even has jurisdiction over the issue. One of the chief questions we have about the principal structure is, what is the principal structure and what are the accessory structures? Even if the project fits within the special exception of a use as a museum, this question must still be resolved. Just because there's a museum use may be allowed on the property doesn't permit there to be two principal structures. In the application, the concert house is being treated as an accessory structure for dimensional and height relief. However, there are two prior decisions that have treated the concert house as the principal dwelling on the property. And also a certificate of occupancy in 2013 labeled the concert house as a 2-story single-family residence with the pre-existing non-conforming 1-story cottage. In the ZBA decision of December 2016, the requested variances were permitted in order to permit reconstruction of the original historic house. However, the ZBA expressly confined its decision to just that, and said it would not consider or assess any future uses prior to reconstruction of the original historic house. However, what the board is doing right now is considering a visitor center prior to the reconstruction of the original historic house. And that would seem to fly in the face of its precedent. The board was also clear that any proposal would have to be considered in the future. So in some ways, we believe this proposal isn't timely at this point, at least based on the 2016 decision. Similarly, the January 2017 ARB decision said the sole question before it was the reconstruction of the original building, not the extensive landscaping that was proposed, and not even the museum use. So you have two decisions labeling the concert house as a principal dwelling. And the first decision saying that the ZBA won't consider any future uses until the concert house was reconstructed. So in some ways, why are we here at all? The only reason we're here is because the visitor center, which is a serious issue on this property. Moreover, we're not aware of any code provisions that allow the relabeling of a former principal dwelling under two prior decisions to be treated as an accessory structure. So that would mean that there would be two principal structures on the property, with the visitor center being an additional principal structure. The application says nothing about converting the primary dwelling to an accessory structure, except indirectly by asking for dimensional and height relief for the two-story dwelling where 16 feet is permitted. And even if the ZBA were to permit this act of relabeling a principal dwelling, it sets a terrible precedent for standards that the board has to apply in the future. For example, people in residential neighborhoods would have a basis for asking that their current two-story small house be treated as an accessory structure and then build a larger structure and label it the principal dwelling. I also want to note that the prior ZBA decision reserved the issue of whether a CEQA evaluation had to be done with respect to future uses. And that should also be a question before the board. With respect to jurisdiction, we also have some questions about whether the proposed future development, and here I refer specifically to the visitor center, is properly before the board at all. It was never the subject of any town or visitor or village resolution. The town's acquisition resolution in 2015 allowed for the use of the CPF funds to, quote, rebuild, reconstruct, and manage the concert house. In that resolution, it specifically referred to the appropriateness of using CPF funds to increase open space and being appropriate for designation for park purposes in the village's Green Parks Recreation Open Space Target Preservation Area of the Community Preservation Project Plan. So how does a 4,000 square foot visitor center contribute to preserving open space? The proposed visitor center simply exceeds the scope of the resolution acquisition, which was made and stated to rebuild, reconstruct, and manage the concert house. We also have the 2016 resolution authorizing the supervisor to enter into the intermunicipal agreement with the village, which specifically stated that the village's purpose and intention was to rebuild, reconstruct, and manage the concert house. Again, there's no mention of a visitor center. The intermunicipal agreement was also, which was finally entered, also has a similar reference. Moreover, the intermunicipal agreement authorizes the village to license out the management of the concert house, but it makes such a license contingent upon town approval. We're not aware of any written approval of the town which permits management to extend beyond the concert house to management of a visitor center. We submit that in order for the visitor center to be considered, town resolutions are needed to approve the expanded scope of the project, and specifically written approval of what is being proposed by the applicant in managing the property. I also want to mention that the intermunicipal agreement specifically states that all uses of the property must comply with the provisions of Town Law 64E, which is the CPF fund otherwise formerly known as the Peconic Bay Region Fund. Subparagraph 3 focuses on the need for funds to implement a plan to preserve community character. And subparagraph 4 gives examples of what preserving community character mean, which include A, establishing of parks, and subparagraph M refers to preservation of historic places and properties. As noted at the outset, we do not question the importance of preserving an historic place such as the Concert House. Clearly, the acquisition of the property for that purpose was and is within the scope of the Town Law 64E for CPF funds. What we question is whether establishing a visitor center of some 4,000 square feet has anything to do with preserving an historic place or establishing a park. The most analogous museum within the village of Southampton is the Thomas Halsey Homestead. That house is preserved and the grounds have lovely gardens, but there is no 4,000 square foot visitor center. Finally, we want to mention, with respect to the waiver of 47 parking spaces, the fact that they've applied for such a substantial variance in itself shows that the visitor center wasn't within the original contemplation of the original acquisition of the property. I thank you for your time, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Mr. Curcio, it's on my mind as well. Could you respond to whether you believe you have town authorization for this project?
Well, they signed as the applicant on the application.
I understand that.
They gave us
talked
consent.
about that, but that's not to say that they, as a board, have approved this project.
I mean, we have a consent from the supervisor. I don't know how else, what else I would require, what other proof I would need that the town is okay with that. Do I have to get a resolution? Want me to try and get a resolution from them
Yes.
to approve this? Okay.
I believe that Brenda Simmons has her hand up, as well as Preservation Long Island.
Yeah, can we hold off and see if anybody
Let's let everybody talk. Yeah.
anybody new wants to speak, and whether also just so see about the resolution. Do you want to also, Mr. Curcio, speak to we're conflating some issues here, and I want to segregate them because we're a zoning board that looks at zoning guidelines, the village zoning code, and we apply the village zoning code.
Mm-hmm.
And what was just brought up is what we would refer to as a substantial variance, a variance so substantial that I don't know that we've ever granted a variance as large as a variance for 6 parking spaces where 53, are required. So we would also need some help from you in the balancing standards that we follow, but we listen to your expert and your consultant with respect to other available parking in the community, but that does not, at least to me, speak to satisfying the standards for a variance. That speaks to whether or not this zoning code provision is necessary, but it doesn't speak to the 5 criteria that we apply for granting a variance or denying a variance. So we do have a real uphill battle there, where providing only 6 spaces where 53 are required is essentially ignoring that zoning code provision. And why have the provision if we're going to ignore it? And why wouldn't another applicant be able to come in and use the same quote unquote arguments that there's other available parking in the community? The zoning code acknowledges that there's other parking in the community. It just doesn't necessarily say that because there's other parking in the community that you're no longer required to have on-site parking. You're short 47 parking spaces. Can you address the 5 standards the 5 criteria that we generally use and see if there's a way for us to grant such a substantial variance?
I believe I already gave my, argument for the 5 factors. I don't know what else you would, I mean, I could turn it over to Osman. He can give you a little more insight into that. He's the parking expert. We do have, I think, unanimous town board approval for the site plan.
How did you arrive at the 53 spaces? What's the arithmetic on that?
That's according to your code. That's the calculation. I don't have it offhand. It's on the site plan that was provided to you. Should be.
Go through why you need 53 spaces.
It's based upon the square footage of the building.
Of which,
Based upon the employees, it's based upon the participants. It's according to the code, whatever the calculation is 53. It's on the site plan.
of which building? The 4,000 square foot building?
The cottage and the visitor center
So both.
and the outdoor seating.
But I'm sorry, Mr. Curcio, I might have missed something. Did you just say that you do have a resolution from the town approving this site plan?
No, I don't have it. I think there was a unanimous approval by the town board for the site plan.
For this particular site plan with the 4,000 square foot visitor center, et cetera?
Not
Not for
just
this revised one, but for a prior one, I believe, yeah.
I'm sorry, if you could share that resolution with us, that would be great. We were under the impression that there is no resolution approving the visitor center as part of this project. There's been discussion about a visitor center and future development, but the ZBA, at least in 2016, was quite clear that it was would only consider future uses after the concert house was preserved, which still hasn't occurred. In fact,
I don't see that in the decision here. I see that any future proposal would go before the zoning board, but I don't see anything stating we have to wait for the Pierce Concert House to be constructed before going forward.
I'm quoting from the decision. It says, prior to reconstruction of the original historic.
You're looking at the 2016 decision?
Yes, Pierce House. It would not consider any or assess any future use prior to that time.
What paragraph are you reading?
It's on page 2. Sorry, I just put it down. I was going by my notes. It's a carryover sentence at the
Says
bottom.
secret does not require that speculative possibilities for future use and development or the subject parcel be considered and assessed prior to reconstruction of the original house. Where does that say we can't go before the zoning board?
Well,
If I may, counsel, if I may,
Yeah.
I would just respectfully submit that the decision that was submitted by the applicants is before the board. It's a written document, speaks for itself. And I think that the board can take into account what the determination was at that time, rather than have council go back and forth in terms of what it means. The whole document's before the Board of Zoning Appeals. I just wanted to go back to what I think the question had been that I believe the chairman had asked about was, Mr. Curcio, if you're aware of a particular resolution approved by the town with respect to this site plan, which included the visitor center. I don't mean to cut off council, but I think the decision would stand for itself. So I think that was the question that was asked. I don't know, quite frankly, that there is that particular resolution. And I think that was the question that was asked.
That's what I was told. I will look into it. I'll try to get that.
And if I may, Mr. Chairman, this may be a good point for me to ask. The applicant has submitted a great deal of information and documentation to the board. The board has also received correspondence from others interested in the property. I assume for the purposes of this record, that those are all being deemed a part of the record for the board's consideration. So that would include, for example, the prior decision of the Board of Zoning Appeals.
Yes.
We have that?
It was attached to the application that was submitted. There were a series of exhibits.
In
and
April?
It was
April.
April, it's stamped in April 1 of 2021. It's a 2-page decision. And I can certainly make additional copies available to the board.
Could you please?
Sure, absolutely.
You also want to look at the ARB decision. And there's a recent ARB decision on landmarking, which also has some application. But that goes to the use of CPS funds which protect historic places under municipal law. It doesn't go to the question of whether a visitor center is being approved.
I'm sorry, are we going to talk about the variances at all that we're requesting? Because we have not discussed one other than parking.
Council, again.
We've revised our plans and submitted them and nobody's even discussed it. We've taken some of the, suggestions of the board and we applied them to our site plan and nobody seems to have even acknowledged that. And apparently some people haven't even read what we've provided them. So.
No, Mr. Kirk, we absolutely
wait a
appreciate
minute.
the changes that you're making. I mean, we're still of the
No,
opinion.
we're very willing to work with the board. We're making changes. We're listening. We're not being, standoffish here. We just I want to make that clear as well.
Well, one of the questions that we're seeking to resolve is whether you can take what was previously held to be a principal dwelling and relabel it and add another principal structure.
Hey, if I may, Ms. McGivern and Mr. Curcio, if I could just ask that we allow the board to run the proceeding.
Sorry.
There had been a question that was asked to Mr. Curcio. I appreciate that there was an answer to that question. I just wanted to return. I believe that there were still members of the public who had wished to be heard, who perhaps have not had that opportunity. And I'm wondering if they could be allowed to do so.
Jolene, do you have anybody with their hand up?
There are hands up, but nothing from the attendees. Everyone who would like to speak is already in as a panelist. So Preservation Long Island would like to speak again. Her hand is up.
Well,
But
instead,
from the audience, no.
why don't we evolve to looking at some of the area variances? If nobody else from the public wants to speak, I mean, I will take the cue from Mr. Curcio that we can address some of the area variances other than the variance for the parking spaces. There's still one thing we haven't discussed at all is there's a side yard variance being requested. In a typical zoning application, we would discuss the need for that and whether or not there is a need for it. I mean, couldn't the building just be more narrow?
I just wanted to say, we are, experts. Preservation Long Island has been doing this work since 1948. I have 20 years experience in the field. So I just wanted to say, this is a publicly owned historic site, a designated landmark that's eligible for listing on the National Register. And everywhere else in the country, on Long Island, even in Southampton, there is accommodation for that this is a very important historic resource of the village. And, I would encourage you to consider that this isn't a privately owned home we're talking about. This is a publicly owned historic resource of the village that is a landmark now. And there's always considerations for that in any kind of preservation planning. And it's not unusual for accommodations to be made in order to ensure the integrity and the appropriateness of honoring a site like this. This is a tremendously important site. And again, I don't think the accommodations being asked for are very extreme, considering the scope and significance of this site locally, nationally, internationally. And it's not unusual. And that's speaking as an expert in the field. And just like PS, me personally, my PhD dissertation work at the University of Chicago is on a site in Japan. It's called Dejima. And in Japan, people move heaven and earth for sites like this. So just to note that, I know Ms. McGivern is speaking about just in generally about precedents, but this is not just any kind of property. It's a publicly owned historic site, a designated.
It's a publicly owned historic site, if you want to refer to it as a publicly owned site, because the town owns it in a residential district. So our job is to look at this from a different perspective. Our job is to look at what, from a zoning point of view, should be allowed in a residential district with adjacent homeowners in their residence. And now we have a structure being built which is different from the development of other sites surrounding this particular site. And as it turns out, we don't have a precedent in Southampton Village where we have, let's refer to it as a homestead with an adjacent 4,000 square foot village visitor center. Let's call it a visitor center. We have examples of other preservation of homesteads, and I believe those were listed for you. So this to somebody like myself who's lived here a long time, and other board members, look at this as somewhat different from anything else in the village. Not the homestead, not the cottage, the 4,000 square foot visitor center. And you referred to it as a small building, adjacent to the homestead, but in fact, it dwarfs the homestead. It's substantially larger. It's disproportionate to the homestead itself. So this in the center of Southampton Village is kind of a little bit different from what we usually see, and there may very well be a distinctive contrast, and it may very well be the board's view that this is not harmonious with the residential district in which you're trying to locate this. And the parking is one issue. The size of the project is another issue. Consideration for the viewpoint of the homeowners, adjacent to this is also, an issue. We have to look at this, as a balancing. What do you need compared to what's right for the community? So it's not as if all of a sudden, this concern of yours is being ignored, but it's being balanced. And I think what we're trying to get across is that we do want to honor the legacy that you're speaking to. And we had thought that by rebuilding the homestead and the cottage, that to some extent that was rebuilding, or honoring the legacy. It's the 4,000 square foot visitor center with only 6 parking spaces where 53 is required, which is causing some concern. And I just hope you understand that. It's a balance. It's a zoning code balance.
I totally understand that. I think it's, if you look at the Long Island as a whole and you look at what is going on, you also need to look at the context specific to this historic site. This is celebrating a person of color. They're so rare on Long Island. They're so rare in the National Register even. About 90% of the listings in the National Register have nothing to do with historic interests in African American and enslaved people. But I think that's part of the balancing too, is that we really need to represent this history. And I think it's fair, the gentleman, the parking expert, Mr. Osmond, has given evidence about why it's appropriate to use the public parking available. And as a publicly owned historic site, it can take advantage of the other public parking that the other cultural sites and historic sites take advantage of too. So I think as a balancing, it's only fair that this site in the history it's presenting to balance history in the presentation of the past and the different
You're not,
constituents.
okay, I understand what you're saying, but we have a zoning code. We don't have
know,
a
but it's-
criterion which.
I think the
we don't
gentleman
have a
said,
criterion to apply, which, is our view of the value of the person being honored. We don't have that in our 5-point, balance.
no, but I think the gentleman
Well,
has
I
said.
understand the
that
sentiments that you're referring to, but it's not a zoning code criterion.
I understand that, but Mr. Osmond has testified several times that the public parking is the balance. And other historic sites and cultural sites take advantage of that as well. So I think it would be unfair to say that this site can't take that into account when the other sites do.
We also did ask Mr. Osmond for more information based on his previous testimony, which we haven't had the opportunity to hear because in fact, the parking study that we heard any information about was quite dated. And
Give you an updated copy on June 10th with the letter.
Yeah, we
Which will be under
we haven't had the
information.
opportunity to hear from Mr. Osmond since.
Okay, I may jump in and give you a summary of what we found. And before I get to that, from my professional opinion, if there's public parking available within the village and we have a public use, that public use, if the parking is available, they may use it. That's my professional opinion. We had responded back to the questions from the board. We reviewed the study we did in 2006 again. We reviewed the study that was done for the village in 2013 for the Southampton Village Center. We reviewed aerial imagery of the parking in the area over the years. And we also went out there and did a new count, June 5th and June 6th, a Saturday and a Sunday.
Ever and ever and ever.
From the review of our study, we still maintain that the village still has a surplus of 20%, which is adequate to support the variance we're asking for. And that was also supported in the study done in 2013 for the village. It did indicate that the village had 20% surplus parking. And if the village encourages shared parking, they will even increase that availability further. In the aerial imagery we submitted to the village, we have images ranging from 2006 all the way to 2017. And in those images, you will see there was still plenty of parking in the village. On June 5th, I went there myself between the hours of 12 to 6 p.m. And I have photos of the parking lots empty, the streets adjacent to the site. There's plenty of parking available. On Sunday, June 6th, there was a market, a flea, how do you call it? No, hold on a second.
Farmers market.
There was a farmers market going on in the village on that Sunday between 9 and 3. I was there from 12 all the way to 6. I have photos showing that Pond Lane, Culver Hill, Hilltop, Windmill, and even the parking lots have ample parking. More than enough, more than 250 vacant spaces available at that time. So that being said, it is still my professional opinion that the village had parking then and it still has parking now. The major issue of the parking problem, as we indicated in a previous study, was it is walking in the village. Everybody want to park in front of the business they want to go to. But if anybody is willing to walk a short distance, there's enough parking in the village to support what the village needs. So we still believe there's a lot of parking. I remember the last hearing, Susan indicated that there's no parking. And I went to look.
My name is Mrs. Susan. Do you know me? Really, this is going too far now.
Mrs.
Yes, I indicated and I intend and I still maintain we have a parking problem. I also maintain that shared parking refers to the business district, not to a residential district. And you keep putting that in. This house is in a residential district.
The proposed use is a public use, and they may use public parking. And there's enough public parking within the village to satisfy the variance we're looking for. I know shared parking will not be for residential development, but all the businesses in the town, I was just mentioning that the village has sought a study to fix the parking problem. And the recommendation given to the village was, if they want to efficiently use the parking that is in the village, by doing shared parking, they can increase the availability of parking in the village. That's a quotation from the study done for the village. That being said, this being a public use and the availability right now, and both in the past and now, there's enough parking in the village to support a variance for the 7 spaces.
Mr. Clary, can I ask if you have any questions, and then maybe we can close this for all purposes and resume discussion at our work session. But I would like to hear if you have questions or concerns.
I just have one question. I've had my hand up. This is Georgette.
Sure, Georgette, go ahead.
I just wanted to clarify because I keep hearing that it's a residential area. I wanted to, for the record, state that this is a historic district, a historic district overlay. So when Sarah keeps speaking that this is a historic property, please let the record reflect that this is a historic district and that 51 Pond Lane is a contributing house to the historic district. And I also heard something about the ARB. If the ARB, when this house was first torn down, if we want to go back to the record, I just want to make sure that the record is clear that the first order that was issued for the ARB was not to issue a certificate of appropriateness to tear it down. That was subsequently overwritten and it was torn down. Why? We don't know. The records are not found. So this house should have never been torn down, like Brenda was saying, because it was a contributing house to the historic district overall. So while this is a historic district we're talking about and a significant structure contributing to the historic district and the historic fabric of the village of Sag Harbor, it's important for us to remember that there was a wrong that was done here that we are looking to correct the record. And also I want to iterate the fact that this is an economic impact to the village as well. So I just wanted to make sure that that was out there. Thank you.
Mr. Curcio, can I ask you, are you under the impression this is not a residential district, but instead an historic district?
No, I'm not. I understand it's a residential district. It's an R20 district.
Okay, because
it is, but
at some point, now I don't want to do it here, but at some point, just maybe coordinate with, you know, your co-presenters that
I understand.
We wouldn't have an issue if this wasn't. We wouldn't have the issues that we're discussing if this wasn't a residential district.
Right.
So I think
no, I understand that.
the idea that, but I think the idea that we don't all understand this is a residential district.
Dr. Kate,
it gets us off on the wrong foot.
I just wanted to say, I said there was a historic district overlay, and this was a contributing factor to the historic district overlay is what I said. I didn't say it wasn't. I wanted to make sure that it was stated that this is a historic district overlay and that 51 Pond Lane is a contributing house to the historic district overlay.
I don't believe that from a zoning point of view, what you're saying is true. Jeffrey, if you can help me out.
It's only an R20 district. It's landmarked. It's not, I don't think there's a historic overlay. The first I'm hearing of this.
Okay, well,
let's not, I don't want to argue this. I don't want to argue this on the record.
I'm not saying that I want to argue this. And my last point that I wanted to make, and it was in Chick's testimony, is that the house, the cottage, and the structure that they're talking about is a fraction of what we saved. So when we talk about the size and scope, and as far as character, I want to make sure that they know that the house that we are talking about rebuilding is only a fraction of what was there. The 49 square feet. Okay, so Chick, I don't know if you care to talk about that, but please refer to Chick's testimony because it is not the size of the house that came down, which was substantial in size itself. So we're not even building back what came down.
If the chairman would recognize me, I would like to make a couple of remarks. If
Oh,
that's
certainly, Chick. It's good to see you.
sure. Yes, and I am representing the applicant in this case, the Village of Southampton. I did want to clarify that I did personally attend the town board meeting of April 22nd. It was held in the morning. It was a full board. We presented the site plan that had the basic elements that are part of the site plan that was first submitted to the Zoning Board of Appeals. And each member commented on the plan after a very thorough presentation from the team. And each town board member put their support behind the plan. There's still a formal approval that they would do after village approvals. But I personally attended that meeting, and each and every town board member indicated their support for the site plan, basically that you have before you. That was April 22nd.
What, can I ask you this, Chick? Why would they wait for our approval if they're all in support? Why don't they vote on it and let us know that they support this?
A big part of this is the funding, and in order to obtain the grant, in order to submit for the grant that would assist with the funding of the overall site and the visitor center, the town board is looking to have village approval before they do that formally. So we did want to keep them up to date. They are the owner, they are a co-applicant, and of course would not be before the Zoning Board of Appeals without the town board fully supporting the project. They voted unanimously in support of the project. And that,
Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry, Chick, to interrupt. The seeker process has to be completed before any of those other agencies can take formal action on the project.
and that's an excellent point. And of course, that will be part of any, that will precede any decision that's a formal decision. And I would like to call your attention to the June 5th zoning consistency analysis report, and particularly section 3.2. And I can go through some of them that were requested in terms of the variance relief, whether there'd be an undesirable change in the character of the neighborhood or create a detriment to nearby properties. We did put this on the record. We have described the variances all in detail, and the requested relief will be consistent with the historic nature of the premises. It will complement the existing institutional, residential, and recreational uses in the neighborhood. We have characterized the neighborhood in terms of Agawam Park, the Southampton Cultural Center, the Veterans Memorial. The proposed use is not unique in the area, as this has been historically the site of the former Pierce Concert Homestead. And the redevelopment of the premises will benefit the surrounding area as new aesthetically pleasing visitor center and reconstructed historic house and cottage. With attractive landscaping and pedestrian features, it will be constructed throughout the site in order to promote connectivity to the park. The redevelopment is a significant contribution to the community, as was said by the Long Island Preservation representative. The benefits sought by the applicant cannot be achieved by some other method other than the area variances that are requested. And basically with this, the project was designed specifically for the premises to accommodate the visitor center while also preserving the cottage and the former Pierce Concert Home. The variances will allow for safe and adequate vehicular circulation while providing enough parking spaces for future employees. And that was part of our most recent submission under cover letter from the attorney, Mr. Curcio. Additionally, the building coverage side yard variances for the one-story cottage in the museum and the rear yard parking variance are the minimum necessary to accommodate the structures and parking on the premises. And we did, as you know, we had kind of a false start. We did hear comments from the board, and we went back and redesigned the building, shrunk its size. The side yard variance is down to 2 feet, which we have characterized as de minimis, and I believe that is in fact correct. The design of the project allows for the visitor center to be set back from Pond Lane to minimize potential views. from the roadway, and the site plan has been designed to minimize the magnitude of the variances to the maximum extent practicable, while also meeting the objectives of the project sponsor to display places for viewing information of historic significance and spaces for program activities. The variances are not substantial in our opinion, as the dimensional standards for the R20 residence district were formulated for single-family detached dwellings on half-acre lots. It should be accepted that dimensions necessary to meet the intended purpose of the project will exceed some of the standards that have been established in the district designed for single-family homes. We recognize that, but we've looked to work with the site in order to minimize the variances and provide this very beneficial use. As noted, the site plan was developed to minimize these variances and provide for the objectives, which is the restoration and retention of historic structures, and allow space for public cultural interaction, enjoyment, and education. It is not anticipated that the requested release will result in significant impacts and instead will positively contribute to the aesthetic character of the area. We did submit in our last submission, again, prior to last week's work session, a footprint map of the uses surrounding the property. And it basically shows that what is proposed on the site is within a few percent of the coverage of other uses on surrounding properties, both residential and non-residential uses. And we feel that's important and compelling. And I would say that, one of the chairman's comments, which I think is really important, is that there really isn't a precedent for this type of activity. To me, that makes this a unique case. And when you have something that's unique, that's on the site of the original homestead, that overlooks Agawam Park and Lake Agawam, provides the beneficial use, provides sufficient parking for employees, is near the downtown and allows for parking in areas where it's a convenient walk to the site, where we have pedestrian amenities to promote that pedestrian and healthy activity. This truly is unique. This couldn't take place anywhere else in the village because you don't have those characteristics. So one of the other standards is the granting of the relief will not have an adverse effect or impact on the physical or environmental conditions in the neighborhood or district. The full potential, as Mr. Cleary indicated, environmental impacts will be fully examined through other reviews, particularly the planning board. And we've already had a work session with the planning board and have begun addressing some of the landscape provisions to ensure native species and ensure consistency with sustainability, proper drainage control. We are providing an on-site innovative alternative sanitary system. There are no sensitive environmental features on the site itself, and any other permits will of course be obtained. So we do not believe that there's any impact to the physical or environmental conditions of the property or the district. And the alleged difficulty is not self-created. Due to the historical significance of the subject property, that being Pierce Conser's homestead, the project has specifically been designed to allow for the restoration of the house, preserved in its original location, preserve the existing historic one-story cottage, and provide for a visitor center. And that's been fully described exactly what it's for, how it will be used. We have characterized that in writing as well as in testimony. There will be landscaping, parking, an improved access point, that being the driveway itself. And therefore the requested variances are necessary to restore the former homestead, provide cultural and educational benefits to the community, and honor the legacy and highlight the historical importance of Pierce Conser. So that's a brief summary of much more detailed information that's in the June 5th report, section 3.2. So thank you for letting me remind you of that.
Thank you, Chick. Mr. Clary, can we go back to you? Do you have some questions or insights on what we've been discussing tonight?
Sure, Mr. Chairman. So Mr. Voorhees did what I would have done, which is a lot of the testimony that's been delivered with respect to this application falls beyond, frankly, your jurisdiction. Your jurisdiction is fairly limited in this regard, and it deals with the area variances. And additionally, it deals with the special exception use application for this particular application. So you do have to address the 5-factor test for those area variances, and you have to consider the special exception use criteria that are established in the code. There's no discretion involved in a lot of those criteria. They're defined explicitly. They're dimensional requirements and so forth. But there are others that are somewhat subjective, and you have to render decisions. So you need the information that you need to render some of those decisions. So it's fair to ask those questions, and it's appropriate for the applicant to respond. I will say the applicant has demonstrated responsiveness. So they have made modifications to the plan. They have addressed specifically issues you've raised by modifying and adjusting the plan, as Mr. Curcio described earlier this evening. So I think it's important to remember your jurisdiction for this particular application and the boundaries by which you are governed to render those decisions. And all of those other issues, while relevant and interesting and somewhat emotional at some points, don't necessarily affect the standards by which you must implement in rendering your decisions. So again, I think the additional questions you've asked require some answers. And at some point in time, you'll do what you always do, which is render your decision. But again, it's following the format that Mr. Voorhees just laid out for you.
Is there, Mr. Clary, some additional information we should request that we have not yet requested?
The biggest issue from my perspective, Mr. Chairman, related to the issues of how the visitor center would be used and the outdoor seating area. One benefit is that they have modified the plan to eliminate what was called a multi-use room, and now that's exhibition space. But nevertheless, that still leaves the outdoor amphitheater, which will operate in some.
Please don't, please, Mr. Cleary, please don't use that word. That is not how we've characterized it. That is not what it is.
The amphitheater?
It's not an amphitheater.
It's referred to as an outdoor seating area. It's been minimized, and it's really an area for reflection, gathering. It's almost like a park bench.
And that's
I
precisely.
just want to make sure that that word is not mischaracterizing what is actually proposed.
Point taken, Chick. So, but that area suggests it can be used in a certain way. You have to understand that. So Chick very forcefully identified how he thinks it's going to be used.
It's been a bit of a sore point, and
right. So, but that's what you have to get an understanding of to understand how the site's being used. So if you have questions, and conceivably your approval can include conditions or limitations that address how that space could be used. And my final point, Mr. Chairman, is the one area variance that is by any measure significant relates to the off-street parking. And I see that you're wrestling with that issue. Obviously, you have technical information dealing with the applicant's position with respect to that. But nevertheless, the variance is substantial by any measure. And just my only point with regard to that is there may be another solution to dealing with that from the applicant's perspective, which is a legislative change. They can seek to amend the code to adjust a parking requirement for this specific type of use, which would be less burdensome, if in fact that's justifiable. That's one way to deal with a substantial variance. So I just put that out there as a final comment.
One of the issues that we've been wrestling with is with respect to the use exception. And it's a question I have for you. Yes, it's a museum, but is section 19 and I guess 20 is the museum, if I'm right?
20 is the museum.
Okay, are they, Mr. Cleary, are they mutually exclusive, or can you actually fall under both?
So I suppose a nonprofit philanthropic organization can also have a museum. The Masons can have a Mason museum in their facility. So I think you can have both. I don't believe they would necessarily be mutually exclusive.
I don't know how you have both if they're not defined.
Mr. Curcio, wait, could I have a moment to
All
just
right.
have some questions here? And I guess my question is, can a museum also have a quote unquote social or educational institution, office or meeting room? In other words, could you
Yeah, I
have
think
that type of crossover?
of course, that's why understanding the charter and what the charter was issued for is a relevant question. So it's what was the question asked when the state education department issued the charter? We want to charter a facility that does the following things. And I think that's what has been part of this conversation from the beginning. And if the answer is all of the things the applicant is bringing before you, the answer is self-evident. If, however, they sought to do something different, and that's what the charter's for, now there's a bit of a disconnect.
Okay, so why don't we, do any board members have any more questions or concerns? And then otherwise we'll hold this open for all purposes and talk more at the work session. Susan, do you have any comments or questions? Julia or Kevin?
Not at this time. I need to look at the information that is submitted for the next meeting.
Not at this time either.
So can I move to
Yeah.
adjourn until our,
Adjourn it for all purposes? Okay, yeah, I'll move to adjourn for all purposes. Can I have a second?
second?
Yes, I'll second it.
And then all in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay, thank you very much, everybody. And let's move back, if we can, to the vote on 46 John Street, where Kevin, you had not been able to log on.
All right. Have you made a motion?
Yeah, we had a motion previously. Jeff, let me know if I have to reassert the motion.
There is a motion pending and the vote had begun to be, am I muted?
No.
The vote had begun to be taken, and the motion before the board, I believe, was to accept the decision as had been prepared by council, and Mr. Guadera had not been able to log on. So Mr. Guadera was not able to vote on that motion.
Vote aye.
Okay, so then we have 3 ayes, 1 nay, but the board approves the decision as written for case number 3103.
Thank you.
So next on the agenda would be case number 3105, 99 Sanford Place. Is the applicant here for?
Could I just ask, did we do 3106 or?
Did I skip some? No.
That's Friendly Manor? Is that, we're waiting for anything?
Oh, yeah, we can go to that.
Well, I don't know. I'm just going down the list here.
No, you're absolutely right. I'm recused from that, Kevin. So if you could take over case number 3106, 86 Prospect Street, I'll recuse and come back.
That's the pool, right?
Yeah.
It's the pool, and then move the pool 5 feet to the north to accommodate the neighbors to the south.
Fantastic.
I mean, it seems okay to me. I don't know how everybody else feels.
It sounds okay to me, Kevin.
Okay.
We're talking about 86 West Prospect, correct?
Julia, yeah.
That's fine. I would vote yes for that as well, but I think we have to actually make a formal motion.
Yeah.
Well, may I ask this question? If, given the board's statements, would the board want me to draft a decision accordingly for the board's consideration?
Yes.
This had been tabled at the last session, so.
Yes.
Okay. I'll prepare a decision for the board's review then.
But we had come to that, hadn't we, as a group at that time?
There had been a question that was raised and one of the board members was not yet sure so the matter had been tabled. At least that was
Okay.
my memory of it.
All right, so if we're going to have a decision, I close this for decision only.
I second the motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you, Kevin.
Thank you.
Okay, so now we'll go to case number 3105, 99 Sanford Place. Julie, is the applicant here?
Yes, Liz Vale is present. She's in.
And I think she was here for the last one too.
Yes, good evening, board members. Liz Vale, Farrell Fritz, 50 Station Road, Watermill. On behalf of the applicant, 99 Sanford Place. If I may, this is the subject properties located at 99 Sanford Place. Can I share my screen? I can show you the aerial.
Sure.
Okay, great. Let me just get rid of this. Here it is. Okay, hopefully you're seeing the aerial of 99 Sanford Place.
Yep.
Thank you. This is currently improved with an office building. It's comprised of 51,955 square feet, has preliminary subdivision from the planning board for 2 lots, one proposed at 21,852 square feet and one proposed at 30,103 square feet. They issued a preliminary approval on March 1st, 2021, with the condition that we obtain special exception approval from this board to allow a residential use of the property in the OD zoning district. I watched your last work session where you requested an overall planning study to evaluate the impact of allowing residential uses in the office district. First, if I may, the chairman kept mistakenly saying that a use variance was required for this application, which it is not. This application is for a special exception use permit, which is defined by New York State Village law as, quote, the authorization of a particular land use, which is permitted in a local zoning law, subject to the requirements imposed by such local law to assure that the proposed use is in harmony and with such local law and will not adversely affect the neighborhood if the requirements are met. Again, I submitted a statement in support, which outlined the standard of review for this board, stating that a special permit use is tantamount to a legislative finding that the use is in harmony with a community's general zoning plan and will not adversely affect the neighborhood. And as a result, the classification as a special permit results in a strong presumption in favor of that use. Then I noticed that the chairman went on to try and discount my reliance on the comprehensive plan in that statement of support, which supports allowing residential uses in the office district by stating it was an old plan because it was from 2000. The distinction, however, is that it was a plan that was adopted by the Village Board of Trustees as the comprehensive plan for your village and your board to follow. You are the Zoning Board of Appeals. You are not the legislative board of the Village of Southampton. Therefore, you have no authority to call for and or adopt planning studies that the land use boards like yourselves can rely on thereafter in their determinations. You are authorized under New York State Village law to apply the code to the application before the board. That is all. The comprehensive plan and planning studies that I cited are adopted by the Village Board of Trustees and represent the official planning studies for the village. They do not authorize you to conduct further planning studies for the village. That is completely outside of your authority as a board. In fact, the Village Board of Trustees, the legislative board for the village, decided that the residential use was permitted in the office district by special exception use. The application before you complies with the existing adopted comprehensive plan and subsequent planning studies. It has already been determined and you cannot undo this simply because you disagree or you think it's old. Here, your desire to consider the impact of this application on the office district as a whole is completely irrelevant to our application. Contemplating that every property will want a special use permit for residential use in the office district is speculative at best and prohibited by law. Each property is unique and special permit standards in the code must be applied when an application is made. You're not permitted to consider the impact on the zoning district again because the legislative board already did when it enacted the code section allowing residential uses to be special exception uses in the OD district. By requiring this study, you are, quote, completely ignoring the fact that the ordinance itself, here, the village code, already contemplates residential uses in the office district. Here, I'm relying on New Morton Village Pool and Recreation Association versus Town Board of Town of Oyster Bay, 21 miscellaneous 2nd, 987. And I'm also relying on Woolworth Leasing Corp versus Sterney, 64 miscellaneous 2nd, 940. That being said, we filed a petition with this board which addresses the special exception permit standards in Village Code section 116-22 and respectfully submit that our application meets those standards. The property is located adjacent to and abutting other residential properties. The properties at 80 and 120 Sanford Place across the street specifically support the application based on the fact that it would be for single-family residential homes rather than an office or commercial use. The establishment of residential uses on the property prevents overcrowding of land and buildings, enhances the value of land throughout the municipality, particularly the residential lots near this one, provides housing for the community, lessens potential traffic as shown in the report we submitted to the board, and the plot area is sufficient for each lot, well over 20,000 square feet. The use is in keeping with the residential uses in the neighborhood, and parking and access will be accommodated on site. Finally, this board also issued precedent-setting approvals in 76 White Street and across the street at 80 Sanford Place. The ZBA issued a special use permit to allow the residential use of the property in the office district for Bo Robinson. Therefore, the application meets the special permit requirements. Finally, I'd like to submit that by requiring a general planning study of this overall district in connection with our application, you are treating our application differently than every other special exception use permit that has come before this board. Respectfully, there is no authority to require this study, and you must consider only our application as it's presented before you. The greater questions that are legal, these greater questions that you're seeking answers to are legally required to be answered by the legislative board, the Village Board of Trustees, not the ZBA. Therefore, please apply the code to our application and issue our special use permit as required under New York State Village Law and Southampton Village Code. I'm happy to answer any questions for the board. Thank you.
Do any board members have any questions?
No, I'm very happy with this application.
We don't have additional questions at this time.
I think she's correct in stating we're overstepping our bounds when we ask for a study of the office district. It's already been done by the village board.
Jeff, do you mind speaking to whether or not you believe we overstep our bounds by requesting our consultant to weigh in?
What I would suggest, I have the opportunity to do, Mr. Chairman, if I may, because that will be legal guidance to the board. I'd ask to be able to speak with you as counsel privately, but I understand, Ms. Vale, you had mentioned several cases. I just want to make sure I have the sites correct, if I may.
Yes, I can email you them after.
Absolutely. That would be appreciated.
Sure, that's not a problem.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, what I would ask to have the opportunity to do is to review those and to then speak to the board as counsel.
That'd be great. Thank you. Susan, do you have any questions?
No, I'll wait for Jeff.
And Ms. Vale, do you have my email address just so that it's easier to?
Let me write that down. Thank you.
Sure. It's jeffblankoff@yahoo.com.
Okay, I would just say that Board Member Guider is correct, that my position is that this is not like a, drainage study or a traffic study. You're asking for a study of the impact of allowing a residential use in the office district on the entire office district, which I advised last time was outside of the scope of this board's review and should not be imposed on the actual subject application before the board, because it would be treating this application differently than every other one that's come before you. Thank you.
Okay, I would like to just respond with respect to your reference to the comprehensive plan from 2000. So on page 24, this is in the materials you submitted. The comprehensive plan states the business districts are in conformance with this comprehensive plan. The plan recommends 2 changes for the village's eventual study. The first is an analysis of the OD zone, period. So according to the comprehensive plan that you provided, it was recommended 21 years ago that somebody do an analysis of the OD zone, but that analysis has never been completed.
Well, if I may, the other language that I cited in my statement of support and my submission to this board outlines the favor that the comprehensive plan offers to actually having residential uses in the office district. And if you read the language completely, rather than just it asks for further study, you see that the comprehensive plan does actually favor allowing residential uses almost as of right. That's what they were asking to be studied. And quite frankly, it's already legislatively determined based on the comprehensive plan and all subsequent planning studies that were adopted after the comprehensive plan, that a residential use is a permitted use in the office district if you meet the special permit standards. And that's legislatively determined by the Village Board of Trustees. And I don't believe under the law, you're allowed to try and study that further to come up with a different result. That's not permitted under the law.
Well, I don't know that it's a different result, Ms. Vale. I do think it's a more educated result. I think we were looking for advice and expert review of the office district that would guide us in our decision. And that's what we were looking for. We didn't exactly know what would be found, but it seems like you're objecting to
I do object to it.
analysis that would inform us, and that bothers me.
I object to it. Not that it would inform you, but that you're asking for it as it's applied to the whole office district. This is an application for 99 Sanford Place and only 99 Sanford Place. This is not an application to consider residential uses throughout the office district, which is what this board seems to want to do at my client's expense. And we've already put in a great expense at trying to present our special permit application to this board. And I believe respectfully that we meet those standards as applied to this application before you. And that is the purview of this board. And that is what's supposed to inform you.
So
And
on one
Not
hand,
an additional study.
on one hand, if I could speak.
Shouldn't be making too much of this case.
Yeah, so on one hand,
Simple
you're saying, can one person speak at a time, please? Do you want to go, Kevin? Go ahead.
This is a simple application. We've done these before. I don't know what the hangup is here. This should be that's like right now.
Okay. On one hand, the applicant is stating that because there are certain precedents, 78 White Street, and I was unaware of 80 Sanford, but I knew of that. Okay, that if I understand it, and I'm not sure I quite do, that you as the applicant should highlight those cases as reasons why we have to grant a special exception use variance in this case. But we shouldn't be concerned that if we grant the variance again in this case, that other applicants would then use this precedent as a way to change the entire office district into residential. It just doesn't.
The problem is, sir, you keep going entire office district into residential, and that's outside of the purview of this board. That's not part of this application at all. The only application before you is whether this application satisfies the special permit standards, and you keep going away from that. You're allowed, of course, to consider whether it's precedent setting, but you should make your decision unique enough so that you can distinguish it going forward from other applications.
That's just it. I don't know that we can, and what it will do following the standards of granting a special exception use variance. And you can proceed any way you want.
I've given a lot of evidence in the record as to why you could.
Sentence? I don't understand how you have conversations with people if you don't let them finish sentences.
Sorry, excuse me, I apologize.
One of the criterion that we would be looking at is what effect it would have on the character of the community. So wouldn't whether this creates a precedent for other special exception use variances contribute to our understanding as to whether we were changing the character of the community in this particular case? I mean, isn't that our concern?
Your concern is the character of the community, and the community, the actual neighborhood surrounding this particular property is residential in nature. It's more residential than office. And so it's in keeping with the character of the existing community here in this neighborhood, in this particular area of the office district. The fact that it's at the end of Sanford Place, it's not on the main artery of North Sea Road. It's at the very end of Sanford Place. It's across the street from two residential parcels, one of which you granted a special exception permit for. The fact that it abuts R20 zoning to the east, R12.5 zoning to the north. These are all factors that the board should respond to and actually cite in its decision to distinguish this site from others going forward. And you can.
Did all of the board members receive a proposal from Nelson Pope with respect to essentially a study of the office district?
Yes,
Yes,
but it
I would make-
it did arrive late, and I don't believe that I was able to give it as much time as it deserved.
You
in
would
my
hold
review.
off.
I would ask you to speak to your counsel before you move forward with any study that analyzes the entire office
Ms.
district.
Vale, if I may, I think that Ms. McCormick had indicated she wished to review it. So I don't know.
No, I'm just asking that they consult. with
I
you
understand.
before moving forward.
I understand that,
That's
Ms. I understand that.
Thank you.
Why should we review it when it has no impact? It's not within our authority. We're doing things out of our authority. I don't know what's going on here anymore.
Ms. Vale, is your presentation complete? Should we
Yes, thank you.
find out if any neighbors want to speak to this, or otherwise we'll keep it open for all purposes?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
There's no hands up in the attendees.
Okay, so can I make a motion to keep this matter open for all purposes?
Should be closing it, the decision. Not keeping it open for all purposes. There's nothing more to be gained here.
That's not the motion. The motion is to leave it open for all purposes. If I could have a second.
second,
All in favor?
aye.
Aye.
Nay.
Okay, so we're going to move on to,
Thank you, board members.
no, thank you.
Okay.
Case number 3096, Andrew Spreitzer, 85 Hildreth Street.
Let's see. Can you please raise your hand here if you're here for Andrew Spreitzer application? Okay, Andrew Spreitzer is coming in.
Hello, Andrew. Who do you have with you?
My name is Richard Fernan and Fischetti, 320 Hampton Road, Southampton. I registered, could not get on except for audio. So I happened to be here with Andrew and at the property, which gave me an opportunity also to look at the property.
I mean, I read through the submissions, Andrew. I think that you provided us with everything that we requested. I mean, I'm in favor of granting the variances that you're requesting at this stage, and appreciate your diligence in providing the architectural drawings and the surveys that we needed.
Thank you.
Can we close this one for decision?
Susan, Julia, do you have any comments on this?
I would, I don't really want to discuss I do not agree with the garage. He has a garage. He can use it properly as a garage, or he can keep it the way it is, whatever he wants. But I think it is not a good thing for the neighborhood. And I think the porch variance is perfectly fine with me, but I feel that there's a consideration. He has a garage. This isn't like he needs a garage. He's got one. How he chooses to use it is his business, but I don't really want to encourage in this tightly close neighborhood that people are now extending their garages. I don't think it's good for the neighborhood, and I don't see any reason for it. So I would vote no on that and yes on the porch.
Mark, that being the case, I would like to take a few minutes then to just address a few things for the record. As you all well know, it's your obligation to balance the benefit to the applicant with any detriment to the health, safety, and welfare of the community. And there are really 5 considerations that you need to look at. The first is whether the benefit can be achieved by some other means feasible to the applicant. It's rather self-evident it can't be. The second is whether there'll be an undesirable change in the character of the neighborhood or nearby properties. We fail to see how a small area variance would have any possible undesirable effect on this neighborhood. And if you've actually visited the property and you stand in his front yard and you look out, there's no one that's going to look at this that's going to be affected adversely. The third criteria is whether this is a substantial request, and we submit to you it's not. We're looking at a 7-foot variance to the north, and that really just extends where the garage already is. It's just bringing it out towards the street. We don't need any variance on the street. He's fine with that. The porch is a variance between 3 inches or 2.3 feet for about 25 square feet. So that clearly is a non-substantial variance. The fourth is whether these requests have any adverse physical or environmental impact. Absolutely not. There's no burden to the municipality. There's no further use of anything that's going to take up municipal services by this. And then finally, whether or not this is self-created, and it clearly is not self-created. This is exactly the property as it was purchased. This is a very small addition. And we'd like to point out that just recently, this board granted rather large relief on another corner lot at 71 Walnut Street with much larger setbacks than Mr. Spreitzer and Mrs. Spreitzer are requesting. In that case, you gave a variance for a garage, 31 feet of relief. Here he's asking for 7 feet. An addition on that one for 35 feet. His addition here is between 2.3 feet and 3 inches for his porch. And as we said, 7 feet for the north side yard for the garage. But the existing garage is already at that distance. So there's absolutely no impact whatsoever on neighbors. The fact that one board member doesn't particularly like it is not a reason to deny it. That's a subjective argument. You need to be objective, and we submit that this is extremely minor variances requested. The relief is not substantial, and we would ask the board to grant it.
Well, I refute. You can say that it's subjective. It's objective to me. There is a garage. It's in a neighborhood where I think it would have an adverse effect to just keep adding on and adding on. What more? I don't understand that. No one is I think against the porch. I don't know why you think we are, but as far as I'm concerned, Mr. Spreitzer has a garage. How he uses it, which is that he's cut off parts of it, so I guess he can't get his car in it. I don't know. It's not my business. All I know is he has an absolutely okay garage, and it's in a place where I feel it is not appropriate for the neighborhood, and I have that right, sir.
I didn't say you don't have a right to an opinion. What I'm saying is that the fact that you don't feel it's appropriate, how is anyone adversely affected by this garage, in your opinion?
I don't think it's adversely affected. I think the neighborhood is the community is adversely affected where everyone wants something more. Could it be done? He doesn't need a garage. He has one. His choice of how he uses it is what seems to be his issue. It's not mine. He has a garage. No? Yes? Don't you have a garage, Mr. Spreitzer?
Dan Gesowitz, when he was asked by the chairman, what is the size of a standard garage? He said 22 feet deep. My garage is 15 feet deep. Your Mini Cooper could not fit in this garage.
But
I did not alter this structure in any way. It is exactly how I purchased it.
That is not the issue.
No, the point is that there is a laundry room.
No.
Pardon me?
Susan, if I could, I think where I came to a decision to allow the variance is, it's a relatively modest house overall. So if he took part of his garage and converted it to living space and then needed to expand his garage, it's still a very modest house. So I don't know that he's really, I understand that he had the garage and basically he took part of that garage and made it into living space. And as a result, he needs to expand the garage, but the house is still modest.
I have to disagree. I do not agree with this.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Yeah, I haven't done anything to this house. I have not made it a living space. The person who owned it in 1968 made the alteration in 1968 to create a laundry room and closets and
Right.
storage. I had nothing to do with that. What I was left with for a garage was a 15-foot garage. By deep, by 12 feet wide. It's barely, you cannot fit a car in there. You can't use it as, you can hardly fit a couple of bicycles. So I'm not asking for a 3-car garage to put my Porsche. I just want one space for a garage, for a car.
And we do understand the situation. Let's, I mean, let us bring it to a conversation in the work session. And for now, I do think you've submitted everything that you can. You know, you certainly satisfied our request, unless a board member wants additional information. And then let us just discuss it at the work session and come to a decision. But I think right now we need to have a motion to close it for all purposes and close it for decision and see.
So moved.
Do you want a second? Julia?
Second.
And all in favor?
Aye.
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 Chairman, did we lose Mr. Guadera?
I had to use the bathroom a minute.
Okay.
Kevin, we're just voting to close
You have enough
case
votes.
number 309 685 Hildreth Street for all purposes for decision.
Closing it for all purposes or for decision?
Yes, for decision.
So, okay, I'll vote aye on that.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so we can move on to new cases, and the first new case is case number 3107. Excuse me. 75 Hetty Creek Lane. Jolie, is the applicant here? Do they want to speak to this?
One moment.
Thank you.
Thomas Zacharias, Phil Pirro, and anyone else? Okay.
I think Dr. Pirro is here for his pool house. I don't think he's here for Mr. Zacharias, Jolie.
I don't think so either, but his hand was up and it was up for a major part of the last application. So Mr. Pirro, are you here for your application? Because this is Mr. Robert Miles Robert application, 75 Hetty Creek.
I'm here. I'm here.
All right, is this your application?
No, I'm 339 Captain's Neck Lane.
Okay, so it's not your turn yet. So I'm gonna put you back into the attendee, and when it's your turn, then we'll bring you in, okay?
Yeah, they zoomed me off somehow and I got zoomed back in. I'll reconnect if I have to, all right?
Okay. Okay, Thomas Zacharias, you raised your hand. Please unmute.
Mr. Chairman, I just want to clarify, is the applicant or somebody for the applicant present?
Miles, yeah, here, hold on. Now Miles Roberts' hand is up. Hold on.
He's the applicant, Jolie.
Right.
Right. Well, his hand wasn't up until he should be coming in momentarily.
Good evening.
You're in. Go ahead. I don't think we can hear you. Are you unmuted?
No, can you hear me now?
Yes. Go
Oh,
ahead.
good. Good evening. I'm Miles Robert and Marco. Robert is doing the building, and we're on number 3107 here. And do you want to tell them what we're doing?
Yeah, I mean, we're looking for relief in the front yard for an addition, which would increase the bedroom count. And involved in it, this property has wetlands on it. So involved in it would be upgrading to the new sanitary systems that are required, and the septic tank. Another small variance would be that the septic tank location is inside slightly of what the wetland standards would be.
Hey, get out of here. It's her ball. All right.
Yeah, so we're looking at a very modest size house built in the 60s of approximately 2,200 or so square feet. The owner, due to changes with COVID and some other changes, has more family living there. Currently, there's only 3 bedrooms. Looking for a couple more bedrooms and also a small space, a home office space, as a lot of his work has moved home. So the addition that we're proposing, while requiring some small variance, we feel is actually the least invasive way to get those small additions he's looking for. Primarily, it is least disturbing and of the furthest possible distance to existing wetlands, doing the addition in this spot. If you see that the property borders Hetty Creek and that the wetlands boundary is kind of curved, so that any kind of addition on the south side is much closer to the wetlands than the north side. And so one consideration of putting the addition there was to be as far from the wetlands as possible. And then the new sanitary system that was designed in conjunction with sanitary engineers, DEC, the location of this system is almost the only place where it could actually be on this property. There's almost no other location where it can be due to 2 constraints. You'll see the 200-foot setback from the wetlands, which is this curved line. Oops, sorry. That curved line there. So it could not be more placed further to the south, because that 200-foot wetlands line, which follows the contour of Hetty Creek, moves towards the east as it goes south. So the sanitary system would be too close to the property line if moved south. It's pretty much, with the future expansion tanks allowed, as far from the neighbor 71 Hetty Creek that it could be off the property line, and it's past the 5-foot requirement. And as far as moving north, it could not be done because groundwater is only at 6 feet. So this is a shallow water system that's designed. So the pitch from the septic tank to the leaching pools can't be extended over any longer run because the leaching pools would have to be placed too deep. So basically this addition has been thought out to be as least invasive as possible and in consideration of the specific characteristics of this property, which primarily stand out as the wetlands constraints. And I would also argue that in terms of not wanting to set a specific precedent about front yards, there's a few specific characteristics of this property. One, obviously, is the wetlands constraints. And I don't believe, I mean, I'm a builder and I've seen zoning boards often consider extra relief for wetlands properties because of the constraint it applies to other, to other zoning requirements. And the other factor here also I wanted to just bring up is that this is a flag lot. So the normal, placement of front and rear yards is very unique here. We're not talking about a front yard that's on a street that we're going to be, moving closer to. And in fact, the neighbor at 71, we're facing his rear yard, which is extremely rare for a front yard to face the rear yard. So moving closer to someone's rear yard should be less of an impact than would be normal in a normal setup. That's it for me right now.
Do any board members have any questions at this point?
No.
No, not at this time.
Here's the question that I have. It's a single-story residence. Why not just build out on the second floor?
Well, we are building out over the second floor of the garage. The other consideration that was thought of was to build out over the south end. But the reason that doesn't work is the owner and his family do not have another residence that they can move to while there's construction. And this construction being over an existing garage would not preclude them from staying in the house during construction. Would not, if you try to build a second story over all the existing bedrooms, you would be opening up and compromising the existing living space, and nobody could live there.
Wow, that would set a really heavy precedent though for us, if that's the reason, I'm afraid.
What do you mean?
Then everyone would want to be able to live in their house while the construction is going on. It's your option to do the construction.
Right. But the question is just merely the alternative of why am I doing it here versus on the other side of the house?
Well, I mean, the real question is, one of our guidelines is to see if there's an alternative that doesn't require a variance. And so that's what we're pursuing. And, is there a way, I mean, you are building, it looks like a second floor.
Yes.
Is it going above the existing garage as well?
That's what it's pretty much only going over, the existing garage. Like a very, very small sliver of like an adjoining mudroom, but it's pretty much being built over non-essential living space currently. The other reason that it couldn't really go over the south side is that there is no real adequate place to put a stairwell without losing another bedroom. So it kind of defeats the purpose of building a second story for a bedroom addition when you have to lose one, putting it over existing living space just to get the stairwell. Again, these are small details, but they're important because we have to really see if there was an alternative, viable alternative to put it somewhere else and get the same result. And that in particular is another reason why it wouldn't really work over that south portion of the existing house. That portion of the house is comprised of 3 bedrooms and a stairwell down to the basement. So there's no room to get a stairwell up without losing one of the bedrooms. And then you've kind of deconstructed one of the purposes of what's going on.
Mr.
Sorry, just one last thing. I mean, again, I know you're concerned with precedent, but I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, that combined with being a flag lot, which often gets special reliefs, the wetlands constraints, which are massive, a massive portion of this property also merit relief consideration often.
Mr. Thomas Zacharias has his hand up. He'd like to speak on this application.
Yes, I have a question for the chairman. I'm the neighbor to the east at 71 Hetty Creek Lane. And my question was, the current house is fully conforming with the 60-foot setback. The expansion, I have no problem with it being on the north side of the house, but it could also be pushed back because it's a long way from the wetlands, and therefore it would be compliant. Or it could be maybe only a de minimis variance. So I had really sort of 2 questions I wanted to raise. One was about, you give variances if there's undue hardship because there's no other way to do it. There's clearly another way to do it. And if there's some sort of injustice with the 60-foot setback, and there's no injustice. So it would seem like the way this board, what could happen is anybody who wants to do anything, they just come in and they say, well, there's wetlands, I need to put my addition here. And I'm just wondering if, the board doesn't say, look, we have setbacks for a reason and try and design within the setback. And if you can't design with the setback, then you come back for a variance. It can be designed within the setback. The second point is that's my opinion. I mean, what you give relief when there's no other solution. And we've heard about other people's problems. This one, it's convenience to build towards our house, a 23-foot addition. It's not.
No, it's not convenient. I would prefer to build towards the wetlands, but it's a greater variance and it's a greater environmental impact. You're absolutely wrong. I would prefer.
Sir, could we, I would just suggest if Mr. Zacharias is speaking, can he conclude his statement?
Yeah, and that'd be interesting to learn that, because it looked like there was plenty of area to build close to the wetlands. So we'll learn. You'll enlighten us to that. But the second,
let me ask this question.
By the way, let me just finish my second point, and then I'll be finished.
Okay, go ahead.
The second point was about this, the sewage tanks, including the one saying F. Yes, they're 5 feet from the property line. On the property line are 2 50-foot trees that we enjoy looking at, and I think you would want to save. And so the question is, if you're digging down 4.5 feet, putting in these string of tanks, you're going to be chopping up all the roots of these large trees. I know the roots go out because they're on our property, and I'm sure they go out to your property. Has an arborist said you can do this without killing the trees? So my question, those are my 2 questions. I mean, is this the best location for the tanks if you want to save the trees, or are the trees just going to be killed? And 2, your comment that it's inconvenient or non-environmental to do the expansion without the setback. I don't. Maybe you could explain that.
Okay, so let me just interject then. Chick, if looking at this survey, is there, from your point of view, a way to navigate expanding on the west side of the garage?
The structure setback is 150 feet. I'm sorry. Yes, so sorry, I work in a couple of villages. And so you can see that the proposed addition is 175 feet. The parts of the house are within 120 and a half feet of the wetlands currently. So I do believe there is some room. You know, I think that the idea would be to try and avoid the encroachment into the 60-foot front yard. And I think there could be other design solutions, again, depending on what happens to the garage, if that's rebuilt. You know, that's really not up to us. But, you know, if the structure were 150 feet, it would comply. And I would think that a new addition that's 150 feet would most likely be acceptable to the board, given the fact that there are other areas that are closer and that would in fact conform with the structure setback. I did flag the wetlands on this property. It is accurate, although I'm a little curious why it doesn't go up to the north property line, but I think we have enough information because this is really the top of Hetty Creek and the wetlands do taper off to the west. So that would be the closest point. I know that there is lawn in the backyard and, you know, while the structure itself has little or no impact to the wetlands, even if it's moved west and meets the 150-foot setback, I was going to ask if it were possible to provide some buffer here. And the IA sanitary system is a tremendous benefit. It removes nitrogen from 65 milligrams per liter down to 19 or less. I think the comment about the trees is well taken, but it does look as though some of those are expansion tanks.
All expansion tanks, yeah.
Yeah, the eastern row,
Yes.
labeled F. So I don't think those are installed unless they're needed, but if they were needed at some point in the future, the tree could be damaged and it's probably a good idea to get some input from an arborist. So, Mr. Chairman, I went beyond your question. I hope that's.
No, we're on the same page exactly. And I guess, Marco, I guess the question is, would you be amenable if there was a way that we could navigate so that you could build an extension to the west of the garage?
Okay, since I've worked with the DEC on this as well simultaneously, I'm not sure that they're going to agree that they would prefer it closer to the wetlands than the other way. So while you might make me feel comfortable that you would okay it in a future meeting if I change the plans that way, I'm not sure that the DEC would.
Jake, what's the DEC setback?
Are you in, to the applicant, are you in front of tidal wetlands or freshwater wetlands for this?
Tidal.
Tidal wetlands. So their structure setback is 75 feet under part 661, which is the enabling regulations under Article 25 of the Environmental Conservation Law. They would have no problem. In other words, the village is much more stringent. And I can assure you that the DEC has regulations that say you can put a structure within 75 feet of the tidal wetlands. So I would not expect that to be an issue. And if you're putting in an IA system and providing some additional buffer, you know, those are all environmental enhancements for the property. So while it may be inconvenient to go back to the agency, you know, you should recognize that the village is more stringent. The landscape setback is 125 feet. The DEC has no such setback. The structure setback is 150 feet, and the DEC's is half that, and the sanitary system setback is 200 feet. So I don't think that'll be an issue for you.
Okay, I mean, there's also facts that, you know, you're building, if you were to build back there, you would be closing up a whole wall, you know, an existing wall there that's all windows
And chimney.
and the fireplace And you would be digging out new foundation where our plan is very invasive, non-invasive, because we are reusing both the north and the west foundation of the existing garage. If you make me bump out to the south, as you know, I'm going to overcut 10 more feet. I'm going to dig down to groundwater, which is at 6 feet. And it's a far, far messier job environmentally, project site, everything. It's much more invasive. And I hope you can see that.
Well,
Versus,
listen, we're trying to work out an alternate that we were hoping, would
right.
satisfy all parties. Are you saying that you're building this on slab? You're not digging down?
No, we're the existing garage, both the foundation that's closest to Hetty Creek and the foundation that's closest to the north back property line, we would be reusing that. It's structurally sound enough to support a second story. So the only extra foundation that we would be digging is that little bit, that 12 feet that we're asking for the variance to go out in the front and across, which is considerably further also from the wetlands than where we'd be digging. And since you can see the test hole is all the way by the driveway and there's water at 6 feet, I'm not sure where water would be, between the pool and the garage, but you're talking about a large overcut for a new 2-story foundation that you would prefer to what we're suggesting. So there's a lot of considerations. We put a lot of thought into this. Honestly, we're not wanting to go into the front yard. We have a lot of reasons and thought behind the placement of it. And again, given this is not a true normal front yard situation, the neighbor that's brought up issues has his rear yard and swimming pool in our front yard. It's kind of odd that somebody who has a 7,000 square foot, 7-bedroom house with his rear yard facing my front yard or the owner's front yard would be bringing up this concern. And then to top it off, the trees, which we have pictures are on our property. So what right does he have to discuss what happens to the trees? Although we do want to protect them as well. We do want to protect them as well, just so it's noted. But why does he even have any say in it if they're on our property?
Well, I would venture that the trees would be for screening, but maybe that's not a concern of yours.
If the trees fall, we'd be very willing to say that we would replace them with like 20 to 30 foot trees taller than the addition.
Okay, do any other board members have questions or comments, or should we just, for the time being?
My question is, can you do this without getting a variance? Yes or no?
I mean, we kind of hashed it out. I mean,
Really
not accomplishing the same things and not without, in my opinion, much more significant site disturbance.
If I might add, the living room has windows all around it. The addition would block that. I don't know if that's a concern to you. It is to me. Also, the chimney is exactly the right distance by code from what we're doing. If we moved it back, we'd have to get rid of the fireplace. And I don't know if that's a consideration to you, but it's a major one to me.
Yes.
So there's a lot of, I guess, compounding issues.
Yeah.
But given the flag lot and given the wetlands constraints, how the property is constrained, I think that's that's not setting any terrible precedent that properties similar to this at least can be considered for such a relief.
If I could add one thing, again, we're talking about something that goes 12.5 feet further. And it is what the variance is by 16 feet wide. We don't intend to make it any wider than that. So it's just a small little area. The only other, and we're very important to me, is that I see the sky and I don't really want a second floor higher, so it doesn't bother neighbors, doesn't bother us. I mean, yeah, we could raise the whole house up that much, but I'd rather, we only need 2 bedrooms. I just want to, this is off to the side, you can't even really see it. So it doesn't affect anybody's view. I'm really curious what Mr. Zacharias is objecting to as it affects his property with that, because we have it way off to the side and it would just be 12.5 feet out. I mean, you could put the size of a small car. Doesn't seem like a very big thing, but I understand you have your codes and that's why we're begging forgiveness to approve the variance.
Well, okay, so why don't we just hold it open for all purposes. We'll talk about it at our work session. This was your first presentation. We appreciate it. It was certainly detailed and professional. So if I could make a motion to hold this matter open for all purposes, we'll discuss it at our work session. And can I have a second?
I'll second that.
And all in
Aye.
favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Let's move on.
Okay, thank you for your attention and everything else. Thank you.
No, certainly. Thank you.
Thank you.
Let's move on to case number 3109, 339 Captain's Neck Lane.
What happens with
What I have?
Is
I have
that, did I skip something?
3111. The Bathing Corporation.
Oh, I'm so sorry. You know, we're printing on both sides and it's confusing me.
Getting closer though.
So we are on the Bathing Corporation,
Yes.
present for the applicant for the Bathing Corporation.
Yes, we're on case number 3111, 14 Gin Lane.
Somebody has their hand up.
Yeah, Mr. Pirro has his hand up, but he's not up until the following.
Dr. Pirro just likes to keep his hand up, that's for sure.
Let me see if there's anyone else.
We're all tired.
Mr. King and Mr. Panza, you're in. Who's presenting?
Mr. Panza, are you making the presentation?
I was going to go second.
Okay.
Mary Jane Otto is coming in as well. Is she
That's correct.
presenting? Okay.
Yes. And I can share my screen while Mary Jane is presenting.
Mary Jane, are you in? If you are, please unmute. Mary Jane, please unmute and start your camera. You need to unmute.
Are we here?
Yep.
Yes, you are in.
All right, sorry. I was having technical difficulties. Mary Jane Asado, Burke Flanagan Asado, 21 South Main Street for the applicant. The application before you is for the Bathing Corp of Southampton. It is dimensional variance. May I share my screen if that's possible? Because I have the
Please.
share. Hold on here.
Mary Jane, do you want me to bring it up?
Yes, please, because I have it up, but for some reason it doesn't seem to be, oh, here it is. Here it is. Can you see it? Yeah.
Coming.
Pardon me?
Yes, we can see it.
Yes.
Okay. The proposal is for This arcade structure here, it is a total of 388 square feet. That is the roofed area to an existing Snackmar building. Now, just so you get your orientation, I'd like to show you the survey here. It's this building here, the existing Snackmar building, and the arcade with the arches is this shaded area here. All right, so I'm going to go back to the arcade. This is what it would look like when it's constructed. Right now, currently, this is what it looks like. Okay. Sorry, that's the elevation. Let me go back. This is the roof structure of 388 square feet is a 0.3 increase in lot coverage. So the existing lot coverage is 46,322 square feet. And after this 388 square foot addition, it will be 46,710 square feet.
That's it.
Pardon me?
I have to sleep on that.
0.3% of lot coverage. We are also requesting crest of dune setback from the southern first rank of dunes to 55 feet. That's when 100 is required. But I point out to you, as you can see from the site plan, which I'm clicking back to, the building itself, there are structures south of that that are much closer. So we submit to you the primary structure is actually closer to the rank of dunes. And so we're not in any way getting closer than the existing use. I don't need to point out to you that this is a long-standing pre-existing non-conforming use in the village of Southampton. It is has been in this location for decades. The entire lot is actually a little bit over 4 acres, and the siting of this arcade is actually essentially located so that you're not going to be seeing this visibly. It is a non-conforming use in a non-conforming building, and that is why we are before you, but you have authorization pursuant to your zoning code to extend and grant a variance for this because it doesn't exceed 50% of the non-conforming building area, and that was established in 2018, and I believe we submitted all of that to you. So, and also we are not changing the nature or character of this building. This arcade with the arch structures, this project is actually was as a result of the pandemic. Prior thereto, this was a cafeteria style service in the existing building. And when the pandemic hit, it was considered that it was imprudent to have people go through here and be in this crowded situation. There is an open building permit for the renovation of this building so that people will now come to the counters, and the renovation, which is essentially been completed, provides a better work environment for the employees that are in, and provides shade in this under this area for those members to come up and place their order and then go back to their tables. And this false chimney here is to hide there's fans that are required as a result of this renovation. And so we have a false chimney here. Now, in the application, I did request, if necessary, a height variance because I was uncertain because it is a false chimney, not an actual chimney itself. But the aesthetic here, and you can direct your design questions to the architect who was with us, that this design is in keeping so that it's more in character with the main cafeteria building. I submit to you that if you take the balancing test here, we are square on in the sense of the benefits to the applicant clearly outweigh any detriment to the community or in adhering to the code. One, we cannot accomplish this addition without a variance. One, because it's a non-conforming building, it's a non-conforming use, and it's an already a situation where we are at this existing setback from the dune. Is there any detriment environmentally or to the character of the neighborhood? I respectfully submit to you that the dune setback that we're asking for is, as I indicated, although at first blush substantial, There are buildings that are closer, and this is over existing brick. You may have a question, because I had the question initially, why can we not accomplish this with something less substantial than this roof structure? If you're familiar, this is right on the ocean. There are winds and other weather conditions, and anything that was temporary with awnings and poles really may actually be a danger, because if they blow away, you're talking about members that are within striking distance of such a structure. So the alternative here is over existing improvement. It is not a pristine space that has not been disturbed. And we submit to you, it's actually the minimal that is required to provide what we consider to be shade for the members and a really safe and more hospitable work environment for the employees therein. Unless you have specific questions to the designer or to myself, I don't want to belabor this any further, because you do have other cases before you this evening.
Do any board members have any questions?
No.
No. It was a
Julia?
good straightforward presentation.
Chick, do you
I'm
Chick, do
actually
you have any
interested in what
environmental
Chick has to
concerns?
say about the crest of the dune location and compared to the other parts of the property.
I've just put up the site plan, so this is the shaded area.
Sorry, I was muted. So you can see the coastal erosion hazard area line going through the kind of the northern third of the development area of the property.
Mhm.
I was curious, maybe from Mr. Blinkoff, about how Chapter 49 would apply here, or is that done strictly by the building department? Because this board has issued other coastal erosion hazard area permits, and I did check my records, and the beach club did do modifications to the site in 2006, and the ZBA did issue a coastal permit. It was termed. It was for more extensive activity than what's proposed here. That's more of a procedural question. Jeff, I don't know if you want to think about that now, or what your thoughts are on Chapter 49. We did have a Chapter 49 case a couple of months ago as well.
Let me review the code and advise on that. Mr. Voorhees, I didn't know that was an issue we're going to be raising.
Okay, yeah, just
Mr. Voorhees,
coastal erosion hazard area line. So just from the standpoint of straight environmental considerations, the entire area is terraced. The beach club has been there historically. There are other shoreline hardening structures for protection. There are extensive structures south and more within the coastal erosion hazard area. And from an environmental standpoint, the placement of the cover over what's already really a terraced patio type area won't have a significant adverse environmental impact. I don't think it would increase the base flood elevation. I don't feel that, it's really any kind of a environmental concern with respect to coastal erosion.
Thank you.
I do have an aerial photograph if that would help to visualize, but I think we all know the club and, certainly the site plan. Let me just put that up very briefly, because I think it will help to kind of get a sense of.
Don't drag it out.
Is there somebody that can allow me to share?
You should be able to share, Chick.
Okay, let me try again. No, it says I can't share while other.
Let me, I can,
Mary Jane
I'll
would have
stop
to
share,
close out.
sorry.
Yep.
There we go.
And nice to see you, Mary Jane. How are you?
It's a nice thing. Oh, I just wanted to tell you, unlike other, we did go before, we did submit this to the building department, and the building department had determined that, that we needed, it was rejected on the base, this portion was rejected on the base that we needed a variance to put up this arcade structure, so.
Yeah, so I just had that procedural question before because we had a
No, I understand.
Chapter
And in
49
fact,
permit recently.
uh,
But this helps you. I can zoom in a little bit, but you can certainly get the sense that, you know, it's a fully established and developed piece of property. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think we're talking about
that is the area that we're talking
Mhm.
about.
this building here.
Yes.
So, you know, again, there are other shoreline hardening structures south of that, existing pavement. This should not really change any conditions on the site to a degree that would cause me concern from an environmental or coastal erosion standpoint. So I hope that is helpful.
Thank you. Yes.
Oh, one last thing. We do have a communication from the Doomed Church. Mr. McFarland indicated that the Doomed Church had no objections to this application.
I'll just put this back up in case there's any reference to be made to that.
Jeffrey, what should we do at this point? Should we leave it open for all purposes pending your review, or how do you want to proceed?
I would ask that the board please do so. And I didn't know if there were any other members of the public who wanted to be heard. I didn't see anybody else admitted, but I just wanted to check.
Jolie, do you see any members of the public who would like to comment?
No.
Okay, so that I make a motion to leave this case open for all purposes. Can I have a second?
Second.
And all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So let's move on to case number 3109, Philip and Marion, I hope I'm pronouncing it correctly, Pirro, 339 Captain's Neck Lane. Jolie, do you want to let Mr. Pirro in?
Mr. Pirro is in. He needs
Thank
to
you.
unmute and start his camera, and Liz Vale is in as well.
Is my camera not working?
You are not on.
You click on the video thing, lower left.
Oh, start video?
Yeah.
Okay, all right, thank you. May I go now?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you, board members, for hearing my application. I'm sensitive to the late hour, and I appreciate your patience. As I said at the working meeting several days ago, when we did the as-built of the plan, it was discovered that the foundation subcontractor had mismarked the corners of the foundation, which resulted in a what we believe a small incursion into the side yard setback, and also resulting in a front yard necessity for relief. And I do apologize again, and I ask for the merciful consideration. Following up your request, I have 2 letters of support from my 2 neighbors who are directly impacted by this, and hopefully those are in the file. They're from the front yard neighbor, Mr. Lopez Balboa, who supports the application for granting a variance, and my neighbor to the west, Mr. Aquavello, who also supports the side yard variance and front yard variance. I also, at your request, gave the original building permit as part of the file. I thought that was in the original application, but Jackie Allen, I think, made that available to you. So I'm here to answer any questions, and I appreciate your consideration.
We do have the letters on file, so we are set with that. Do any board members have any questions?
Not really. I think it's just a case of the typical mistake. I don't think it was willful. I would say that.
Jeffrey, Jeffrey, I do have a quick question for you, just looking at this. And why didn't this need a front yard variance for the pool house? I mean, I understand that it was set back, but it still is in the front yard. Does that not require a variance?
Just one moment, Chairman. Mr. Chairman, you're talking about whether or not need not be a separate variance as opposed to accessory buildings being placed within the front yard?
Yes.
So you're talking, should there not also be a setback variance?
Well, no, the applicant right now is looking for the setback variance because it was built closer than, than allowed. But doesn't it also require a variance just to be in the front yard?
Right, well, I'm looking at the notice, and what it was noticed as was to allow for an accessory building to be within the front yard.
To be within the front yard setback?
Yes.
Okay, so we're covered?
Yes, it's 116-9A3, and that refers to accessory buildings not to be placed within the front yard. And it went on to state, in order to permit, I'm cutting to where the front yard setback of 96.8 feet for 99.9 feet is required. So I believe it is covered in the notice.
Yeah, I guess what I'm saying is regardless of the fact that this was built closer to the front yard, it would have required a variance anyway.
And that's noticed.
Okay.
Yes, that they need a variance, yes.
Okay.
For that, and that's what was noticed, is in order to have it where it is.
This might be just purely procedural, but even if the contractor had not built it in the wrong place, it still should have required a variance.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
Well, so.
and it is requested.
Okay.
Understood. I'm sorry, Mr. Pirro, it's purely procedural from our point of view because, it looks like we would allow the variance, but this should have been the subject of a variance in the first place.
I was not aware of that.
I know.
Obviously, no one was.
Should we close this for all purposes, or do we have any questions or concerns?
I just think it's an unfortunate mistake of which there can be. And now that I know they already needed a variance anyway, which nobody mentioned, it's even more interesting.
Kevin, do you have any questions or concerns?
No, are we closing this for all purposes or are we closing this for decision?
I would close it for decision if that's okay with everybody. Fine. Okay, so I'll make a motion to close case number 3109, 339 Captain's Neck Lane for decision.
Second.
And all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay,
Aye.
Thank you, Mr. Pirro.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate your time at this late hour.
So we're going to move on to our last case of the evening, which is case number 3110, 54 North Main Street.
Thank you. Good evening, board members again. Liz Vale, Farrell Fritz, 50 Station Road, Watermill, on behalf of the applicant. The subject property, I'm just going to share my screen. Give me one moment. I apologize. Here we go. Great. The subject property is located at 54 North Main Street. It's comprised of 1.67 acres or 72,740 square feet. It's currently improved with a 5,384 square foot, one-story multi-tenant office building located in the front of the lot on North Main Street, and with a 2,400 square foot, one-story commercial wood shop in the rear of the lot with associated parking. The subject property is split zoned with the front portion of the property in the R20 zoning district, and the rear is located in the R7.5 zoning district. The office and the wood shop are pre-existing non-conforming uses that were established prior to the residential zoning on site. The applicant in this case is seeking to subdivide the property into 2 conforming lots. I have a copy of a subdivision law map here for you. There we go. And lot 1 is proposed in the rear. It'll be comprised of 40,000 square feet. And lot 2 is in the front, and it'll be comprised of 32,740 square feet. The proposed lot 1 in the rear is proposed to be developed with a single family home, eliminating the pre-existing non-conforming commercial wood shop, which represents a special trade contractor use. And proposed lot 2 is 32,740 square feet and will remain the existing commercial office building and associated parking that's on site. That's going to remain. The Village Planning Board issued a resolution of sketch plan approval on September 8th, 2020, preferring that we create a proposed flag strip to the rear parcel, creating an additional side yard setback relief required for the front office building. The board stated in that resolution, whereas the planning board preferred alternative 2, the 2-lot subdivision flag lot alternative, which showed the flag lot on the southern boundary. Therefore, to satisfy the board's preference, we are seeking, I could just do this. We're seeking a variance from Village Code Section 11611.1 to allow the pre-existing office building on Lot 2 to be at 0 feet right here, where 20 feet is required, and a variance from Village Code Section 11611F for 7 feet of relief to allow an 18-foot flagpole where 25 feet is required. Right here is the 18 feet. It's the most narrow point of the flag, as you can see. It's 20 feet, 5 feet here, and 18 feet right here. And then we are seeking relief from Village Code Section 11611.1 for total side yard for existing building to be 6.4 feet over here, 6.4 feet, and then 0 feet respectively, where 57 feet is required. So granting of the subject variances will not produce an undesirable change in the character of the neighborhood or create a detriment to nearby properties. The property has an as-of-right yield to establish 4-lot subdivision and instead seeks to create only 2 lots. The parcel in the rear is proposed to be 40,000 square feet, well over the existing R7.5 zoning district lot area requirements of 7,500 square feet. Additionally, the lot will be developed with a residence and eliminate a pre-existing non-conforming wood shop in this neighborhood, which will benefit the neighborhood and conform with the character of the neighborhood as well. The office building in the front will remain and is pre-existing non-conforming, has been there since at least the early 70s, according to the aerials and GIS. The development of the parcel in the back of the residence to a residence is very much in keeping with the character of the neighborhood. Indeed, every property surrounding this property, proposed lot is developed residentially. The proposed flag already exists in the form of a driveway. Let me just show you the, hold on, I'll just clear this. And I will show you the existing, you can see on the aerial, the existing driveway to the rear wood shop is already on this side to the on the southern boundary where we're proposing the flag. So nothing substantively will change with respect to the access on this site. The variances, if granted, would just formalize the access to the proposed residential parcel to the rear. The benefit to the applicant cannot be achieved by some other method given the existing location of the pre-existing non-conforming office building in the front. The placement of the existing building on this L-shaped lot and the configuration of the building in the front leaves no alternative for access along the sides of the building without requiring a variance. Although the variance would create a 0 lot line where currently an approximate 18-foot setback exists, building placement will not change and it would still be laid out in its current configuration, meaning the existing driveway to the rear wood shop is exactly where we're proposing the flag lot, and nothing here would really change. The requested variances are not substantial given the totality of circumstances in this case. Developing the property with 2 lots rather than 4, formalizing the access to the rear with a dedicated flag, all satisfy the planning board's preferences in this case. Additionally, the existing non-conforming building in the front leaves no room for alternative layouts in this matter. The granting of the variance will not negatively impact environmental conditions. It will allow the creation of a conforming use in the rear of the property and will not change conditions on site in the front. Additionally, the action represents a type 2 action pursuant to SECRA, and no negative impacts to the environment will occur in granting the requested variances. The proposed variance request was not self-created. The pre-existing nature of the buildings on site and their configuration on this L-shaped lot, along with the planning board's preference for this layout, led us to come to this board seeking variances tonight. Therefore, the benefit to the applicant far outweighs any detriment to the community in this case. Again, we're seeking 2 lots where the yield is 4. We're making a pre-existing non-conforming wood shop into a conforming residential use with a lot area that far exceeds the 7,500 square foot requirement. We're maintaining the office in the front of this parcel, which abuts North Main Street. And the 2 lot subdivision will only benefit the village, will decrease the nonconformities on site by eliminating the wood shop and reduce the nonconformity uses from 2 to 1. Thank you. I can answer any questions the board might have.
I have a question because when you change it when you put a house back there,
Mhm.
what about if there's a fire, given the 18, isn't the reason that a flag has to be 25 feet has to do with emergency services access?
Well, any proposed layout of a flag in the village of Southampton will have to be approved by your fire marshal and the fire district. So that will definitely have to be approved. Yes.
So we're supposed to do this before it's, because I actually think that, you know, I guess if the wood shop burned down, it would still be bad, but if you're asleep at night in your house, or it's an issue. I never understood why it had to be so wide, but that's what I'm asking.
Sure, we can find that out for you and circle back with an answer. I can reach out to the fire marshal before you make a determination.
Thank you.
Julia or Kevin, do you have any questions?
No. Seems a large improvement. 40,000 square feet in a 7.5 zone. Wow. It's a
Julia, do you have any questions? My question would be, can you have your survey provide lot coverage and GFA calculations as well?
Yes.
Are you okay
Sure.
on those things?
Yes, we are. We did check because I understand we're creating, the front lot has such a large building on it that we wanted to make sure. Yep,
Okay.
we can provide that as well.
So that's a Squires Holden addition that you could provide?
Absolutely.
Jolie, is there anybody in the audience that might want to be heard? Any neighbors or anybody else?
There's no one left in the attendee list.
It's late.
They're too tired, I think.
They all went home.
Yeah. Okay, can I have a motion to leave this open for all purposes? Case number 3110, North Main LLC, 54 North Main Street.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so can I have a motion then to close the public hearing of the Southampton Village Zoning Board of Appeals?
So moved.
And second,
Second.
and all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.